Okay, we're off. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Somewhere over the rainbow, where blind there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Hang on, I'm just trying to load it on my tablet. I've got to change accounts. Hang on. Over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you did, they really do. Got it. Someday I wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me. Where trouble smells like lemon drops, away above the chimney tops. That's where you find me. Well, somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream. Hey, Han! I just sent you the link, Han, so you already had it though. Someday I wish upon a star, and I wake up where the clouds are far behind me. Where troubles melt like lemon drops, away above the chimney top. Check this out, Han. Squizzy, my boy, and Molly Moo Moo. They're best friends, these two. They're really good friends. They actually hug each other and everything. It's really cute. That's where you find me. Well, somewhere
over the rainbow. Why, little why can't I? If birds fly over the rainbow, then oh why can't
Okay, guys, I got the Haggman Report, a thing on the Bible codes. Let's see if they're going to give me a strike for this. I bet they do. They're just after me. We all know that by now. Man, I can't believe they blocked me, but the things they blocked me for, like Paul Begley Mike from around the world, and he doesn't get blocked.
With the Bible code. You've heard of the Bible code, the Torah codes, the Bible code, or plural, if you will. Well, we're going to have on tonight Jonathan Matthew Wright. He's a Bible code researcher. And when I say Bible code, I'm not just talking about the Torah. I'm talking about the Bible itself, the entire Bible, Old and New Testament. And you might be familiar with this, with the Bible code, simply from media. For example, there was a book written by Michael Drosnin back in 1997 called The Bible Code. And then, of course, there was a film in 1999 called The Omega Code. If that's your limits, if that's what you're familiar with, then you're going to want to tune in tonight because Mr. Wright is going to dispel a lot of myth behind the Bible Code and provide a lot of great insight.
Looking forward tonight with Mr. Jonathan Wright. He was somebody we met down in Orlando at the Prophecy Conference, and I'm looking forward to that interview tonight. There's a lot of questions I have pertaining to the Bible code, pertaining to code. What's it? Code search. I think he says code searcher, and it's very interesting.
I'll just sorry for talking over you. Folks, if you go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, that's HomelandSecurityUS.com, on the front page, the top entry there, the Bible code, fingerprints of God embedded in the Holy Bible, posing as a question.
Yeah, 1 week strike for playing Mike from around the world.
Jonathan Matthew Wright, his Facebook connection his link is there, as well as his YouTube series is there, and that is the Facebook group is Code Searcher, and the YouTube is link is up there as well. I just wanted to make sure that people were directed there and were able to get to his.
And Han, as soon as I come back, they'll give you another strike, and they're doing to me what they do to Alex Jones. They stop him every couple of streams and take his channel down. I reckon they're doing the same thing to me.
Website as well as his Facebook page. Wow, it slipped my mind there for a second. Back, ladies and gentlemen, to a very special Monday edition of the Haggman Report. It is a live broadcast. Today is the 7th day of April 2014. For those just joining us, we have a very special guest this hour, and next hour joining us is a gentleman by the name of Jonathan Matthew Wright. I had the pleasure of this.
I'll tell you guys, my original OSD code, it had something like, I can't remember the numbers, but let's say 220 comments, and 20 of them said things like, you could only have got that from the Holy Spirit. Well, what YouTube done, they deleted all the positive comments, completely deleted them. Not all the positive ones, but the ones that said they could only come from the Holy Ghost, they deleted them. And you know my soul creation video? Do you remember that one? I actually typed the whole thing out, and it was like, 500 words or something, and they deleted that as well. So I must have been on track with my soul creation for them to delete them to delete it. That's why they're picking on me.
Speaking with them at length today, and also at the Prophecy in the News conference, he caught my attention because, folks, we hear about the Bible code, right? If you're like me, where do you hear it from? Well, a book or a movie, and of course, if you go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, and I would urge.
Yeah, let me just see if the screen's frozen. Oh, stop it, dog.
And I would urge everyone to do that because there are, in fact, extremely important links to our guests' website or Facebook presence and what am I trying to say? Facebook presence as well as YouTube series. But you'll remember, perhaps, back in 1997, a gentleman by the name of Michael Drosnin wrote a book called The Bible Code. And then there was a movie in 1999 called The Omega Code, addressing the Torah code, or the code in the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, the Pentateuch, if you want to call it that. But tonight, Jonathan Michael Wright, he is a gentleman who caught my attention. He's been very studious over the last number of years, well, since 9/11. He's got an amazing story, but he has been working.
Look at them kissing, guys.
The Bible code. Now, very simply,
Give each other a kiss.
I can let him explain, of course. I can let him explain himself.
Look at Squeezy loves him, look.
But many people believe and they will assert, and I contend that properly assert, that there is indeed a code within the text of the Bible, a divinely inspired code, not something put in there by little green Martians or whatever, but and certainly not something that would be randomly accessible. What I'm saying is, in the Hebrew text, especially in the Greek text, both in the Old and New Testaments, which differs, by the way, from the assertions or the contentions, as I understand them, from Michael Drosnin and others. There's a hidden message. There's a code, if you will, and if you understand the Hebrew alphabet, each letter represents not only a letter but a picture and a word. Just keep that in the back of your mind. But we'll let our guest explain more about this. It's our pleasure to welcome Mr. Jonathan Matthew Wright. Go to HomelandSecurityUS.com for the links to his YouTube and Facebook websites. But with that, Joe and I would like to welcome you, Mr. Wright, to the Haggman Report.
Thank you. Shalom, and God bless you guys. It's such a pleasure to be your guest. It's an awesome show. I've been following you guys for a few months, and I had the pleasure of running into you at the conference. And I'm just excited. God's opened the doors to be able to speak because there's, like you were saying in your synopsis there, there are those that have already put the information out now that have somewhat of a bitter taste in people's mouths, especially what they call failed Drosnin predictions. And and so it's a blessing to be able to show what really the codes are for and kind of debunk what's already out there in the myths about what the codes are. So it's a pleasure to be here. I'm glad I got to talk to you today.
Yeah, it's great. Now, Joe and I were talking earlier today, and here's the problem that we have. A lot of times there will be a story, or there'll be an account with using Bible codes as an example, and it's interesting how things get convoluted, whether it's intentional or with the best of intentions, yet or perhaps even diabolical, nefarious, we'll say.
Right.
But the fact that it's great, and folks, we've talked with Mr. Wright, and in fact he brought some of his research to the Prophecy of the News Conference, and to see the amount of work and the analysis that he's done is so he's done his homework, and he's dedicated his life to now doing this, and he's got quite a story to tell. But Mr. Wright, for those people who might not know what we're talking about, the real Bible codes, what are they? Just give us kind of like a Bible code 101, if you will.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, let me just say that the codes are not just in the Torah. What you'll hear from the rabbis, Rabbi Gladerson and Rips and others, they hold to the truth that the Torah is the blueprint of the universe, which is true. These words were actually given to Moses on Mount Sinai, word for word, letter for letter, which we now call the Torah. Now, based on that, these rabbis believe these letters are divinely inspired and hold some intrinsic power within itself of revelation. That is true to a point, but it doesn't stop there. And it goes further than that. It's even dimensionally cross-dimensional bounds. We've heard in the prophecy conference at the lecture, the rabbis are now working what's called dimension, which is a cubed form of looking at the codes. Now, there's a misconception based on Drosnin and his books that codes are for prediction, and that is totally untrue. God didn't give us a crystal ball to know the future. It's like giving a loaded weapon to a child, and I told you that today. So this kind of, when I started researching this, I wanted to know what God's purpose was. It was obvious to me, based on the statistic and probability data, that this was more than randomness. This was more than coincidence. And guys, I've gone and looked into what they call the monkey text or the control text. War and Peace, Gone with the Wind is essentially booked with an equivalent amount of letters as we're talking about a code that you use to check to see if there's it's a scientific experiment really to see if there's anything there. And from looking at these other texts, I can tell you that there is times where there's a random occurrence of words that may come together, but to take it further than that is impossible. You just can't find the level of encoded stuff as you do in the Bible. To me, it is absolutely unequivocally a divine hand. It is the DNA of the Bible, if you will. If you wanted to look at blood cells on a molecular level, you'll see the fingerprint of God in DNA. It's the same thing with the God.
I like that. I like that. Now, just to be clear, so people understand this, because I had a difficult time understanding this initially as well. When the Bible was written, the text, or as it's written, imagine, folks, you know the paper. If you go to a party store, for example, you can get these big rolls of paper that cover your tables, for the party. They're huge rolls, and so it's my understanding, Mr. Wright, that the Bible, written in Hebrew, of course, one writes, the Hebrew language is written from right to left, and it's written out very carefully, and it's written out on this continuous scroll, or this continuous piece of paper, like I described, and on each end is a cylinder or something that would allow the text, or the actual copy, to be rolled up. Is that an accurate statement? I mean, this is what we're looking at. Okay, we lost the connection of Mr. Wright. We're going to get him right back. But it's my understanding, folks, and I'll just fill in the time here as we're waiting for him to come back. It's my understanding that this is exactly what how the Bible, the text of the Bible was written, and it's just one continuous. They're not pages. It's just a big piece of paper, if you will. and handwritten from right to left in Hebrew, and it's all on this one big piece of paper. And this is another thing that I learned, and I'll have to double check this with Mr. Wright when he comes back, is that if, for example, a scribe back in the when a scribe was translating or transliterating or copying, whatever you would like to call it, the Bible. I shouldn't say translating, but copying the text of the Bible. The scribe would, if the scribe made a mistake, an error on a letter, we'll say on the last word, last page of the text itself, you would have to start all over again. So imagine that. That's the level of accuracy. Do we have this right back?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Did I do justice to that, Mr. Wright, or no?
That's a good visual of the codes. The people that hear me on YouTube hear me talk about the cylinder. What we're talking about is a mathematical algorithm that came about from Rabbi Rips. He's a mathematician, and in my opinion, one of the smartest men on the planet. He deals with things called group theory. It's a very complex form of mathematics, and he's so intelligent. But he recalled the story of Weissmantel, a rabbi from World War II, who was using what was called equal letter distance skip to send messages, secret messages to help the Jews escape, their death. And what he did was he applied that mathematically to a computer program and put the Bible in it as each letter has a reference number. And when you're looking for your initial search term, it's called an access term, the Bible code program will.
And it sounds like Mr. Wright's having some Skype issues, as we do so frequently here.
Isn't that interesting? Well, perhaps you can send him a message and we can find an alternate method of getting him back.
Yeah, I'll send him the call-in number. And
okay, all right. But earlier in our conversation today I just found it fascinating because for number one, there's a lot of information contained in the Bible code, and if you look at some of folks, there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of I don't want to say garbage out there, but there's a lot of.
There we go.
Oh, okay. Hey, we're back. Okay.
The enemy will work to suppress light in every way, but I'm asking for God's anointing, His blessing on this, and rebuke anything that try to hinder what God is trying to show tonight. So in Yeshua's name, I pray, guys. I don't know how much of that you caught and where I was cut off, but I was trying to explain how RIPS came about writing the program. Initially, this information came through Jewish rabbis, Haggman, the elders, who are very skilled in their knowledge of Hebrew, and there's only one problem. They still have a veil of blindness, and you can find this in Romans 11 when Paul's talking about things that are being hidden from the the Jews, for the benefit of the Gentiles. It's called the church age. But we will be coming upon a time in history called the fullness of Gentiles, when that veil will be removed from the Jews and they will be able to see things that have been hidden from them. That applies to the codes as well, guys. If you follow Glazerson on YouTube, you can see time and time again him looking for the Messiah, and right before his eyes, and I've showed this in his own tables, that Yeshua is right there, but he can't see it because he's looking for a man. He's looking for a king that will be like David. So anything that comes from them, either by intention or ignorance, there's going to be a level of things still hidden there, if you understand what I'm saying. Michael Drawson, on the other hand, was a Jew that doesn't even believe in God, a Washington Post reporter who set out to debunk God. And by his actions, the Bible says, what was intended for evil, God will turn around and make for good. By his actions, I found out about the codes, because until he did that, these rabbis were not going to release it to the public. It was never something they were going to share, and they've been doing this from the 60s to 70s, guys. And it was only in the 90s when Drosden got a hold of it. He tried to invoke God. God. Go ahead.
I didn't want to interrupt you, but this even predates that. Of course, you were telling me about I believe it was Isaac Newton going and looking, attempting to see if there was some sort of hidden messages or encoding in the text. So it goes back, but he
right.
had
Right, and see, he got it, the idea, from reading, the Talmud and some of the ancient writings of what they call sages, because this has been thought to be possible for over 1,000 years. There are Hebrew scholars who
Is that not me?
Did you drop off? All right.
Yeah, the call-in number in your Skype there. For whatever reason, if he keeps having problems and wants to use a phone, he has a number. When he comes back on, we can give that to him, and that would be a more foolproof way. But he was right when he says, the enemy will do this, as we know from too much personal experience. Use whatever means they can to end a conversation, end somebody from getting some information out. And looks like he's back with us. And Jonathan, I just want to let you know, in your Skype box, I did put a phone number in there. If Skype gets keeps doing this, and if you want to connect by phone, that is an option, and then you have the number in there.
Okay.
We can keep doing this, and as I was saying, we have so much personal experience being electronically attacked and tampered with like this, and I know it gets frustrating, but we just keep plugging away, and as you prayed before, we know that the Lord will make way.
Amen. And it is the enemy. We know from Ephesians 6:12 that there are principalities and spirits of dark places that are working overtime to suppress what is God. So if it comes down to it, guys, I can call you and try to go that route. I don't know where I was cut off, so I don't know where to take up from. Can you help me out?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead? I had mentioned about Isaac Newton, and then you had said, of course, this is before the advent of the technology. Now, at some point, the technology was developed to identify the equal letter spacing, encoding, shall we say? And of course, this is applied to the Bible. Now, an important distinction here. You were talking about Drosden being an atheist, basically. Is that what you were saying, or an unbeliever? I don't know if an atheist is the right.
Right.
Okay.
Well, yeah. He calls himself an agnostic because he in his plight in searching the codes, he's at least left space to say there may be a God, which was the same thing that happened to Albert Einstein toward the end of his life. He came to a place where he said there has to be a God. Well, Drosden's gone a little away from that, and he's now more apt to believe that there are aliens that actually put things in the Bible for us to find to alter the future. And I highly disagree with that. I believe that's a deception from the enemy, really.
I agree with that. Yeah, when you had mentioned that during our conversation earlier, it got me thinking that, my goodness, this is really literally the spoken word of God. And folks, where I believe this is important to all of us, why we're talking about this tonight, is because in our conversations with Mr. Wright, there are some very significant findings within this Bible code, within the Bible code, that have been discovered that apply to us today, and we're talking about. I'll just wet your whistle a little bit. Everything from Oprah to Obama to who knows what. Okay, I mean, there are things in this particular, in the Bible code that are applicable to where we are in history today. And
Absolutely.
so that's why it's important. But getting, I guess I was getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here. So, okay. So we could go through all the mathematics of the technicalities of this. I guess suffice it to say that we're looking at a series of texts where, when using a basic term, I think you called it an access term, access word.
That's right. That's right.
You use that,
That's right.
and then just briefly go through the mechanics. I mean, since we're
okay, let me just give you a good example. And this is, listen, this is complete revelation from the Holy Spirit. It seemed obvious to me as a code searcher to get information from here, which is the Olivet Discourse, Matthew 24, when the disciples will say, tell us when the end will be, and what will be the signs of thy coming, and the end of the world. And then Jesus goes into, I believe, a rundown of everything that we're going to see. From seeing false Christ to famines, pestilence, earthquakes, and not in any particular order. He just gives it to us there in the way that he does. He uses terms like they're the beginning of sorrows. Now, initially, that seemed to me like an obvious search term, and there you go. It's there. And so, to me, Jesus was showing in the hidden text when or what about the beginning of sorrows sets it apart from any time in history. It was obvious to me that these points, these data points, could probably be applied to a timeline. And people that follow my channel have seen me doing this. Things like the abomination of desolation, another term that comes out of the Matthew 24. The other is the return of the Son of Man, which we know as the day of the Lord. A lot of information came out of that. The lesson of the fig tree. We know this is about Israel. This is another obvious search term. And indeed, the parable of the fig tree, that is the actual access term, parable of the fig tree. I believe it's only one time in the Bible. And then eventually we come to in the days of Noah. And there's a lot of deep things about that too. Jesus wasn't just using that as a reference. He was telling us literally that it's going to be like that time. Look around, guys. Modification of food, of animals, and even people. Abortion came from fallen angels. And what do we see today? 70 million in this country alone. So it is indeed like the days of Noah.
Interesting. Well, okay. So how do you, I guess I'm looking at a couple of different emails I just received. How do you go about, in other words, when you are researching these Bible codes, what do you do? I mean,
what's the process?
What's the process? Yeah, that's a good,
Yeah. Okay. That's a very good question. I get that a lot of how that I find things. And it really comes down to this. I get in a prayer mode, guys, and I get to a place where I'm talking to God constantly, or singing, and just getting in that mindset of being connected to our Father. And it's at those moments where God starts showing me things, or He'll say something to me that I don't even understand at that moment. I've been studying Hebrew for several years, but I'm still a baby in Hebrew. And I think God has a purpose in that, because He takes the least of them, the most likely, the smallest of them, to glorify Himself. And so there may be times where I'm going down the road and I'll hear something. And the latest, this is the last, and I've shared this before of what he said. I kept hearing the term Hane Yamin Bayin. Hane Yamin Bayin. And I didn't know what it meant until I had to go look for it. And it actually means, behold, the days are coming. And what do you know? One of the tables that I'm working on, it's appearing in the plain text. So what it says to me is God's leaving little breadcrumbs, and He leads me just a little bit at a time, because if He gives it all to you at once, it probably is going to overwhelm me. So He kind of leads me along and shows me what He wants me to see. It's usually something that's on my heart and I'm thinking about at the time, and that he makes a connection there, or he may confirm it through other people. You know, for instance, Mark Iltz, Jonathan Kahn. I was looking at stuff connected to the year 2015 and 2016 that I didn't understand. There was a cycle, it seemed like something with the sevens. And it wasn't until I heard Jonathan Kahn and got the information from Mark Diltz about the blood moons that I could overlap their data to mine. And now I was getting more of the puzzle and could see what God was telling me. And what I was seeing in that was there's coming a time, guys, and you know, in Hebrew it's called the Moed Mishpat Nerasha, which means it's appointed time for decisive judgment. We've been given warning after warning since 9/11, and God's taken us through a process of judgment. So, you know, how I find terms is strictly the Holy Spirit. There's nothing in my own power, guys, that enables me to do something that I'm really not equipped to do, or maybe even be qualified in some people's minds. I don't have a degree in theology. Like I was telling you today, I was doing something totally different, had my mind on something totally different when God pulled me out of that and brought me to this. So,
right.
And really,
it's just like us, you know? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you're doing something you really didn't set out to do initially,
right.
and bang, you know. And certainly, I'm sure, like us, there are. Well, I won't speak for you, but I know for us, there are people a whole lot better equipped to do what we're doing than us. But we're here, so we're accepting the challenge.
Oh, God, you're doing an outstanding job. Outstanding. You know, I'm so proud that there are people that believe in God that are getting out there and they will speak the truth, and that's such a blessing. And actually, we're lacking in that in many areas. And so, what you guys are doing is paving the way and being the torchbearer in the front. You know.
Well, we
and
appreciate
it surprised me that you guys may come against you know, forces that may want to silence you. In other words.
Yeah, it's I'll use the word. I think this is the first time I've used this word. Is creepy at times, but that aside, what have you found in your research that would help our audience, enlighten our audience? For example, Chuck Missler talks, and I'm sure you've seen him. He talks about the Isaiah 53 prophecy, or the Bible code in Isaiah 53, the Bible code.
Yeah.
What have you found, Mr. Wright, that would be applicable to our time, our day, our situation, whether it be America or Europe or wherever?
Right. You know, that goes back to my point about going further than the Torah. God inspired holy men as he did write his word. He gave them those words. So therefore, those words are holy and they're divine. I was telling you today about Isaiah 53, that if you read the plain text, and as a Gentile who you know, has Yeshua, Jesus, you immediately know, even if you're not a scholar, that it's talking about Jesus. Most rabbis, if you talk to them about it, they'll give you 1,000 different interpretations of what Isaiah 53 is. Even to the point where there's some that won't even go there. They won't even talk about Isaiah 53. They don't want to address it. But if you look at it in code, it's very clear. It's talking about Jesus. As a matter of fact, the term that's in there is Yeshua is my name. And you can find the 40 people that were at the cross. And you can find every detail about the crucifixion and the resurrection of our Savior in Isaiah 53. Not only that, but in Psalm 22. I was telling you that also today, that Psalm 22 is another place where you can find Jesus all over it. And I think he was giving us an indication of this on the cross when he said, Father, why have you forsaken me? And most people take that as Jesus was admitting that God had turned his back, when that was not the case at all. I don't believe God ever turned away from his son. I believe he was quoting from Psalm 22, which is the very first lines of that. Why hast thou forsaken me? And it explicitly talks about what happens on the cross. He was pierced in his hands and his feet. And so Jesus was really preaching from the cross.
Okay, all right. Which essentially validates
That's
the
right.
authenticity of the word, of the text. And I think people need to understand that there is a validation. And when you're looking to, for example, as I understand this, and I'll let you explain this, but the process in which you're involved, you're looking for sequential patterns, not randomness, but sequential patterns.
Right.
And also their placement to each other, words being placed. Okay.
Right.
It's important. So from this, and I won't even begin to say that I understand the process. You understand the process. You're looking for patterns. What kind of patterns have you found here?
Well, what you're initially describing there is some of the methodology that the rabbis have established based on experiments. And you got to understand, guys, Glazerson even admitted this on camera, that from one year to the next is like being in kindergarten and the university in the next year. That's how much they have learned about it. There's a lot of speculation on their part, but for the most part, the science is there and it's real. There is a connection to proximity and smallest skip. That is what they hold themselves to be, the backbone of a predictive code. This is working from that perspective that codes are for predicting. I don't believe they are. There's a lot of Kabbalism from these rabbis that they try to apply that contradicts really God. To be quite honest, that's why there's things that are hidden from them. Now, what I found is that there's much that they're not saying, because I've found interactions between words and verses that have a meaning. Sometimes you'll see what I call conjunction or a convergence of a word in ELS form, and then it will share a letter of the same word in a plain text. And to me, that looks suspiciously put there. Also, when you find things at right angles, to each other, if it comes together at a 90-degree angle or crossing over, just things stand out that doesn't seem normal. You know what I'm saying? And then when you research it a little further, then you begin to find out that each letter that passes through a verse has a connection to it. In the last table that I did before the conference about the tetrad, the name Obama had an interaction with the word abomination with the Vav, which that's not by accident, guys. That's not random.
I think
the rest that came out of that was
tables.
Yeah.
I think you had.
I think yeah.
Okay, so explain to the audience and to me, what does that mean? Obama, abomination,
right. Exactly.
I
think it's stating something, brother, to tell you the truth. We were talking earlier today, the purposes for it, and you're right. I think it's for confirmation, validation. I think it's for calibration. There's so many opinions on prophetic verses or interpretations. The bottom line is, what does God mean? What does he mean by this? And I think the encoded text says it all. It doesn't matter what these dime store prophets on every corner who have an interpretation that they form to their agenda. But what does God mean? So that's what I search for. What is he saying here?
Okay.
And
I believe in that case, that's perfect. Okay. In this case, now let's spend some time on Obama, since Obama is the occupant of the
yeah.
Okay, guys, this is January 2015. I didn't realize it was so old.
And that can of words.
Well, let's spend some time on this, because people are curious. Okay, so what have you, as a researcher, found in the Bible codes about Obama?
Okay,
feel free, by the way.
Okay.
I just want to let you know. You can feel.
Okay, whatever he says about Obama, he said in January 2015. It's 7 years later. Let's see if any of it came true.
Feel free. You've got full reign. Whatever you found, I don't want you to hold back. You just go ahead and give us. If it's speculation, let us know it's speculation. But if it's a verification, by the standards of a Bible code, let us know that too. So just go ahead and what have you found about Barack Hussein Obama?
Well, initially, and we're talking about the AC, of course, the potential AC, and I'll use that abbreviation. There are terms in the Bible or indications or words that refer to this person. For instance, son of perdition or man of sin, the Antichrist. There's several that are listed in the Bible. They're obvious search terms, and they do appear. Now, it occurred to me one day that we're talking about knowns here. It is not like we're looking for something that's unknown.
Right.
When you have a list of names, and we're talking about world leaders, because we're not looking for 1 in a million here. We're looking in a limited number of possibilities. In other words, Joe Schmo of Peoria will not be the AC. It is going to be somebody in that position, a vessel that's already prepared, just like Judas was, to be the son of perdition. Now, when you start applying those names, then there's something that occurs that really just threw me, because I got to be quite honest. I like Dr. Van Covering, and I loved his theory on the Heshemite king. It fell into place. I mean, he did a very good presentation. That was my theory initially. But when I went to try to validate that in the codes, I just couldn't do it. It wasn't there. There's no mention of Ben Talil, but there is one name that comes up over and over, and that's Obama. Now, what that means, guys, I don't know. I'm not saying that he is the AC. I've discussed this with friends and colleagues, and we've tried to wrap our heads around what this means. And the only thing I could come up with is that Satan has always had a vessel ready. Even, if you go down the Daniel's statue in all these kingdoms, there was always an Antichrist in that. If you look at the Greek section of that statue, we're talking about Antiochus Epiphanes, who actually verbatim fulfilled the prophecy in Daniel about the abomination of desolation. But then when you go to Matthew 24, Jesus mentions this before in this, and then Matthew makes a side note. Let the reader who reads this understand what he was saying there was, this has already taken place, but it's going to happen again, and quite possibly, I believe, in my opinion, could be a symbolic
welcome back, Han.
fulfillment of that, because I've seen dualities and parallels in some of these things. In one age, you may see a very literal fulfillment, and in another, it's very symbolic. And I think that's what we may be coming up to now. So the other person that comes up, and I don't know what it means, because is the Pope. There are two there. Some believe that this Antichrist is going to be one person. From my research, it looks to me like it's going to be a duality, a form of religious and a form of a political power that are part of the beast system, which is another access term I have, guys, the beast system. This is very real. This is not fairy tales and myth, guys. We're in the age where we're going to actually see the coming of the Son of Man, and I feel very passionate about that. That's why I've devoted so much time in doing this, because as a 12-year-old boy, I was walking my dog one time, a German Shepherd, by the way. I see you have a German.
Yes, we do.
There's Squizzy. Look at him. He hates living here. Look, he's so tortured. Look, he's buggered. He's done nothing but sleep all day, and he's buggered. Look at him. Then he got his little mate, Molly Moo. See her? Pomeranian. Very sweet dog. Squizzy, puss, 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 puss. Sorry, guys.
Do we
Looks
lose
like-
Mr.?
Yeah, looks
All
like,
right.
well, it's saying he's still connected, so I'm not sure. What,
I might have to adjust
there
the
he
gravity
goes.
or something.
There he goes. He just dropped off, so he'll be back up in a second.
Yeah, and he had mentioned Antiochus Epiphanes, and Mark Biltz, and I know some people out there will say, well, no, his research isn't, we shouldn't hang our hat on his research. Well, it's interesting that he had mentioned Antiochus Epiphanes. Let me see if I can find it here, because this is important to me. This is important. Unless we've got Mr. Wright back. I can.
Not at the moment yet.
Okay. All right.
Sorry, that was me.
Then.
And I'm looking for him on the phone in case he calls him by phone, and if he jumps back on Skype, we'll know as soon as he comes back on.
And I'm ripping through these notes I have from Mr. Bills, because there is a point here I'm trying to make. The Antichrist today, and here it is, right? But yeah, here it is, right here. And I totally agree with this. Mark Biltz writes in his book Blood Moons.
Guys, they sort of imply Obama's the Antichrist, and there's still people that think that now. I don't know. I know why some people say it, but I also know why some people don't think that.
He says, I like to ask people, what's the difference between Haman of the Book of Esther and Antiochus Epiphanes? And Haman was all about annihilation, wanting to kill every Jew no matter what. Antiochus Epiphanes, on the other hand, was all about assimilation. One of the great signs of the last days will be assimilation. For example, Chrislam, which is the merging of Christianity and Islam. And
sorry, Roger, we have Jonathan back, and he's called in on the phone.
Oh, okay, that's good. Maybe we can.
Yes. That's a good point, Doug, about the assimilation. I'm glad you brought that up, because we see that in that same statue, the feet of clay and iron that doesn't mix. It's like a seed that doesn't take. And I find it very ironic, or maybe symbolic even, that our president gives the Pope a box of seeds. I mean, there's a lot here, guys, that's going on symbolically.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, okay, there is a lot of symbolism here, and I'll just, and I know you didn't say this, but I'll just say this: when we're talking about the Antichrist, for example, you reference it by AC. It's interesting because, well, I mean, people speculate. Well, it could be Obama, and we've heard this from. I mean, how many times have we heard this? Oh, it's Clinton. It's the Pope. It's this. It's my goodness. You name it, and so it's Doug Haggman actually. It's interesting how the speculation is so rampant, but in the Bible codes themselves, okay. And I'm sure you've done this. Have you researched, for example, Clinton? Have you researched Sharon, and so on?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, I have. And then what we'll find is over and over is we find that Antichrist spirit. By definition, those who deny Christ, the Son of God, is an Antichrist. And so, and I'm saying this to you today also, it's about the name that you're called by. If you're called by the name of the Lord, then you're part of his kingdom. That there are people out there, atheists, Muslim, whatever, that are not called by the name of the Lord, that by definition are Antichrist. Now, I believe that there are going to be many vessels that are possibilities throughout history, and that includes all our presidents, by the way. Have you ever walked around downtown or Washington, D.C.? It's like a revived Rome. So, literally, you can go back, and he's been ready, guys. For whenever God was going to bring down the hammer, Satan's been ready. He's had vessels at all generations. It's a matter of who is going to be the final one, who is going to be that son of perdition. And I can tell you, from historically looking at it, it's always from a superpower. It's never been from the insignificant country somewhere. Each one of those kingdoms in
and that statue were a superpower of the time. There's not many of those today.
Okay. Yeah, that, okay. Well, all right. If you were to sit down and consider this a roundtable discussion, and you're talking to your family, you're talking to your
Here we
friends,
go, our first link.
you know, here's what I found. Here's where we're at.
Our first link on the backup channel, Di. Thank you.
Based on
No
the
way.
Bible codes. Here are the signs, for example, because we're looking at signs. The signs of the sun, signs of the moon. I mean, we've got the 4 blood moons.
No way!
Just go with any of those. What have you found code-wise with the blood moons or with anything of importance here? Let's, or what you think is most important backwards.
Right. Okay. Like I was saying earlier, the dates 2015 and 2016. Before I knew anything about blood moons or Shemitah, I knew this, and there's probably people in your chat room that can testify. I've been saying for at least 3 years, there's something about those years that stands out more than anything.
Wow.
Now, when I got a hold of Jonathan Cahn's research and Mark Bill's, then it was like getting pieces of the puzzle that I didn't have, and now I was able to see more of the picture. And to me, in my opinion, guys, and this kind of goes with what these other guys are finding, the hammer comes down in that time. There's people who are talking about rapture and things like that, and where it fits in, because it fits in somewhere. There's going to be a gathering. There's going to be a time, and if you look at the literal meaning of that word rapture in the Latin, it's a violent term. It's referred to as a kidnapping or a raping or a snatching, a violent snatching, and almost to the imagery of if you have a child sitting in the street and a bus is coming up, and a father runs and snatches that child at the last second of destruction. That's what a rapture is. It's at the last second God snatches out his people from wrath. So I believe that there's what's called a pre-wrath rapture. In other words, before God's wrath, he pulls his children out. And that's coming very soon, by the way.
Now, in the Bible codes, is there anything to support that, or is it,
yes.
I'm talking about a pre-wrath rapture as opposed to a pre-trib rapture.
Right. Well, by definition, we've been in tribulation for 1,000 years. I mean, if you want to go by the definition of that. But what does it mean for great tribulation, or term of Jacob's trouble? Well, this comes after the fullness of the Gentiles. And that's another term that I put on the timeline that falls into place. There's coming a time where there's going to be a fullness of the church. And God is going to turn his attention again to Israel. Well, somewhere in there has to be a rapture. If what I've been taught since a child is true, then it has to appear somewhere. And what I've been seeing is all the Hebrew terms of the gathering or the snatching or the collecting. Like in Isaiah, the term kabas, which is the snatching up or the taking away. There's another term called ketefet, which is the gathering or to be gathered, which are all harvest terms. And the word rapture comes from really Middle French, I believe, and then it's translated from Latin. But the English term rapture is really a violent word. So it indicates to me that there's something, and it goes along the woman that's in travail, that there's trouble in those times. When I've looked at it, and I try to do it, guys, from an investigative point without any preconceived notion of what I'm looking for, just open-minded. Sometimes it goes against what I was taught, even. And whatever's there, I have to take that God put it there to make a statement. And it looks to me, from what I've been finding, is there is a point, and it's before wrath, that God pulls his children out. Now, we may see tribulation. We may see some hard times, guys. You can't hold on to the the fact that you're not going to see hard times, because the Bible says you won't see wrath. And it says wrath. It doesn't say tribulation. As a matter of fact, Jesus says you will see tribulation.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I agree with that, guys. I think we're here right up until the wrap. Right to the last second, I think we're here.
If I may, as I have studied this, the only, or one of the ways I can describe this, at least to me, and how this makes sense in my mind, and folks, sometimes my mind is only handled so much, and I can only understand so much, is there are degrees to me of pain, for example. You know, if you smash your foot with a hammer, it hurts. Or, you know, drop a hammer on your foot, it hurts. If you break your leg, boy, it really hurts. And if you have a compound fracture of your femur, it's excruciating. Now, having said that, okay, one could describe the hammer drop of the foot to the compound fracture as tribulation. But there's degrees of that tribulation.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
So,
and that's,
you know,
yeah, and that's
we
why,
might all
that's why, brother, I believe that's why we're given the imagery of a woman in travail, because it gets worse and worse.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense. I mean, and again, we're just having an intellectual discussion, folks. Please don't take this as don't take this as gospel. Okay.
Right. And let me. Too, also that my research is ongoing. You know, God, at first I was seeing a compression of time that I didn't understand until other things emerged. So, you know, just there's some people that say, "Oh, we're not going to see tribulation. We're not going to see." Listen, the research is ongoing. So, you know, I may find something later at a later date that indicates something else, or you know, another puzzle piece that we need to evaluate to know that what degree of tribulation we'll see. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, at the moment, So at the moment, it looks to me like God's given us plenty of warning. He's laid out a pattern in His Bible. He's revealing things in His codes, in the stars, all these things, current events, and we with intelligence. As we were created to be intelligent beings, you know, thinking, free will, that we can identify and put the puzzle pieces together and know. Paul said, be not ignorant. You know, you should not be ignorant to these things, which is saying you should know. You have the intelligence to know when these times come upon you.
I've got a question from somebody out of Surrey, England, and this is a good time to ask this question. By email, and thank you, Lance, for this question. I just closed the question here. Okay, here it is. Why would God encode anything in the? I mean, what would be the purpose of the Bible
question? Very good question. Let me just say this, brother. Jesus spoke in parables, which is in by definition speaking cryptically. Prophets did the same thing. Prophets spoke as God gave them the words cryptically. That's why you see on the surface Isaiah 53. The reason for this, okay, is because Satan, from the beginning of time, has wanted to destroy God's purpose and His plan. So what does a loving Father, a loving God do? He hides it from the enemy. Listen, guys, the Bible code is not about something that's hidden from you. It's hidden for you from a loving Father. He did not include Satan in this at all. That's why the Bible talks about angels. You know, they long to understand what's in the Bible. It's not a book for them. It's something they can't touch. Except for when someone says that aliens, or in my definition, fallen angels, have put things in the Bible code, they don't know what they're talking about, because this is a book God gave to us as a loving Father. Now, He hid things for us for a time. He didn't hide it from us. We live in an age of confusion, and He is the light that's going to shine.
Diane, China's promised to be very ruthless with America when they invade America. There's a general talking about 10 years ago and he said, what the Nazis done to the Jews in the Holocaust will make what we do to the Americans look like child play. And he was a general, a Chinese general, said that about 10 years ago. And I've told this before, about 10 years ago, Henry Kissinger said it's up to the Chinese to bring in the New World Order.
And share the truth. And that's what I believe the code's for.
Interesting. I like that. He didn't hide it from us. He hid it for us.
That's
And,
right.
and I like to quote the one scripture, and I don't even know what it is, but well, it's in my notes here somewhere. But you know, it's a matter of God to conceal things. It's a matter of for kings or for
Proverbs
for us.
25. Proverbs 25. That's right, brother. That's right.
Yeah,
It's for the glory of God to conceal a matter, and for the honor of kings to stretch it out. So it's an honor. You know, God has called us to be priests and kings under the order of Melchizedek. You know, Jesus himself is our high priest, and we're called under his order. And he's given us an anointing through the Holy Spirit to do such things. And that's how it all works, guys. You know, the Bible code has been shown to have a connection to what's called the ephod. The priest wore this garment, this chest plate that had these stones on it, these precious stones, 12 of them, and then 2 on the shoulders. And when these priests would go in and they would speak to God at this particular time, God would communicate with these priests with what's called the Urim and Thummim. Am I still there?
Oh yeah, you're here.
Okay, I heard it. Okay. Anyway, they would get a word from God with this ephod. Now, this is how God showed me about the other code searchers that are out there promoting their own Messiah or whatever. He said to me, not every heathen who puts on an ephod is a priest. And that's the bottom line. You know, you can have the Bible code and not have Jesus, and you're going to find gibberish. That's it. You're not going to find light. But if you have Jesus and the Holy Spirit, God is going to use that to reveal hidden things. And that's been my discovery, you know, how it works.
Very fascinating. And Jonathan, we're up against the top of the hour break. We're going to take that now. Should be less than 5 minutes, and we'll come back with the final hour as we're joined by our very special guest, Mr. Jonathan Wright. He is a code searcher, Bible code researcher, and with some pretty fascinating information, some awesome things to look into. And I'm learning about this. You know, I haven't learned too much about the Bible code, but this is a topic that is something I would like to hear more about and learn about how
It's certainly interesting, the Bible codes.
Works. And you know, we know that there are messages in the Lord's Word, and that's how he communicates to us through the Holy Spirit, through his Word. And we are now looking into what Jonathan has been researching about different hidden meanings inside the Bible. And you know, people have their different opinions on it. I say keep an open mind and listen and take it into prayer and use your discernment, whether it's something that we need to continue looking into or not. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our third and final hour on this Monday, April 7th edition of the Haggman Report with our very special guest, Mr. Jonathan Wright. Go to HomelandSecurityUS.com. The top article on the site there, you can read on there the links to Mr. Wright's outlets, YouTube and Facebook, and bookmark those. And there's a bunch of great YouTubes that he has put on there for further information. And with us is Jonathan for this last hour. And let's just leave it where we, or pick up where we left off.
If I can interject something here, Mr. Wright, if I can interject something here. The way I got to understand this was through L.A. Marzulli. Understand the Bible code was through L.A. Marzulli, who is at the Prophecy Conference. And the way he explained it to me made the most sense. Okay. And whether one would agree with L.A. Marzulli or John Smith or whatever, just use this as an example. Okay. Think of it this way, what the Bible code is. And Mr. Wright, you can comment on this, this explanation, but think of it this way. For example, to access the code, like the Bible code, or to active or to research the Bible or the Bible quote itself. Start with a phrase or a word. For example, New York, or Obama, or whatever. Then skip a certain number of letters in the text and see where and how many times that word appears. Now, often there's going to be like a matrix of other words that, like a game of Scrabble, are attached to the main word. And Mr. Marzulli said that before the computer age, this was done by counting the letters by hand, and that would just be insane, But obviously, it'd be slow. Now, these codes, however, can be accessed by computer, and thus we have this modern Bible code research process, and that's the way I understand, like a game of Scrabble. Like Scrabble, it would be pretty much like that, like a Scrabble board, a huge Scrabble board.
Right, that's right. And things are hidden there. And once you have an access term, now you have a matrix where God has put specific words. Listen, you're going to find other words there that some of these other researchers are pulling the gibberish part out. That's because we're looking at a resonance, if you will, of time and space. So everything connected to people, places, things are also encoded in various details. And guys, listen, I never initially thought about looking up myself. Never crossed my mind as something to do, because I held the belief that God has got my my life in His hands, and I didn't need to know things about me. I basically know everything about me that I need to know. My future is in God's hands. Now, there did come a point, guys, and it was when I was debunking the Ray L guy. We're talking about him today. He used the codes to promote a false Messiah. God put it on my heart to show what was really there. Now, before that, and I didn't know why at first, he said, I want you to go look for the code searcher. Now, you can find your own personal name in the codes, but if there is a surname or something that you go by that is unique, then it's more likely that it's going to be specifically to you. In other words, if you look under the search term for a name, you're probably going to find everyone under that name because they're going to be together. Even all their traits and everything about them will be layered there. And it's a process of pulling that layering away. Now, when I went to the code searcher and found what was there, God really blew my mind, because we're talking about a person. I was in the Marines, and I had a big head on myself at one time, arrogant. And then I had to go through some darkness with, alcoholism and things like that. But when God pulled me out of darkness, and He started cleaning me up, and I had low self-esteem at that point. I felt like a failure in life. He showed me who I was to Him. And guys, it touched me so deeply that I realized that all of us have a purpose in His plan. Just as you guys are doing this show, everybody has a part to play in God's kingdom. With the thing about the Scrabble, that just testifies to the amount of detail that's there. You're going to find things that are layered. So, really to see what's there about a particular subject, you have to remove those other layers that have no relation to what's going on. But it's there because there's other things about other access terms hidden in the same spot, in other words. In other words, if you had the name Barack Obama, which I believe comes in a skip of 22,026, I believe it may be, and there's going to be other access terms there as well that may have no relation to him. There's also hidden. So that's where it goes to the layering part of it, where there's things that are layered together in this fabric of Scripture. I look at it as time and space and points in history, in other words.
Well, okay, let's go back. Did you find that the attacks of September 11th, 2001 in the Bible code?
Yes, I did, and this is based off of Lips and Glaverson. and Watson, I believe, also had found what is called the twins and towers come together. Very small matrix they found in the Torah, and they can pull all the details out of that. I initially started replicating or trying to see if I could come up with the same, the same thing as these guys, which I did. And, 9/11 was very important, to say the least. It wasn't just a time we were being attacked. This was a particular point in history God was marking, not only with what happened, but the number 9/11 is also significant. Not just in the terms that 9/11 means an emergency, but 9 being judgment and 11 being twins. There's so much symbology here that people may miss. But I did go back and recreate what they found, and it is indeed there. And to me, it is very plain to see that that is a point where God was bringing down the hammer and saying, "You need to pay attention. You wandered away from me," and that's where this whole cycle of sevens come in with the Shemitah and what Jonathan Kahn has found. It's a ongoing procedure that we're going through that's going to culminate to what I was just saying earlier, about the decisive point of judgment. I believe that's 2015, 2016, to be quite honest.
What do you base that on? I mean, to me, that would be kind of to say with that level of specificity that 2015, 2014, 2015 is going to be decisive time. What do you base that on?
I'm basing that on the things that are happening in the heavens and also Scripture. Now, these blood moons and solar eclipses are things that God controls. Now, blood moons in themselves are not anything special. But when they happen on feast days or God's appointed times, it's a place where you need to pay attention. It's only happened very limited times. I mean, what some people say 8 times, what I'm finding is 7. That's why the term 7 tetrad come up there. This is very rare. So when you overlay that and look at the timeline of these tetrads on through 2022, because we have to account for that 7-year of tribulation, and then you see that there's a triad in the very middle.
What is that?
A triad is when you have 3 blood moons together, and that comes in around 2017, 2018. You can also find these charts on my page over there to see what I'm talking about. But Joel, Malachi, all these minor prophets, Hosea, they all testify to the same thing, that there's going to come a time of darkness, and the sun's going to be blotted out, the moon's going to turn to blood. How does that happen? I mean, does the moon literally turn to blood? No. This is where we see, the science of God in the heavens and natural phenomenon, and God is using it to make a point. In other words, when they happen on feast days, we need to pay attention. Now, if you look at a timeline and then all the current events and what's happening with Israel, because Israel is really the eschatological barometer to be paying attention to. It leaves no room for really to explain away what's happening, other than that we're in what's really known as the end of days. In Hebrew, it's Acharit Yamamim, the end of days. It's in all 3, by the way. All 3 religions, main religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam.
Okay. Or the end of days, or is that phrase, the end of days? Is that
yes. Found in there? It's in there. It is in there. And I've done
what does it intersect with?
It has a lot to do with Israel. Israel is present there, Obama, America, the United Nations, war, Syria, all of these current events is found right there, and it's not by accident, guys. God clearly tells us that this is it. These are the end of days.
Guys, China does that to their own citizens. You remember when the virus first come out, there was old people in hospitals in China in the hallways, and they were already zipped up in a body bag, and they were still alive. You might have posted this, Diane. I probably got this from you, and it said that they're actually burning these old people alive. They're still alive when they put them in the furnace. So I'm pretty sure I would have got that from you, Diane. Do you remember that one, guys? So China doesn't care about its own citizens one dot.
And you know, listen, in the Bible, in the plain text, 365 times God says, "Fear not." That's cool.
Han, post that cat bags one you showed me in Messenger. You got a wrench, post that one. Yeah, you don't forget that, do you, Diane? That they're burning old people alive. That's not something you forget. We both remembered it.
One for every day. So the bottom line is, as a believer, have no fear, because your redemption is drawing close.
Amen.
All you have to do is look up.
Amen.
You know, so because these things are happening, is not to, people shouldn't be afraid unless you don't have Jesus. Then you need to be really thinking about your condition and, you know, getting your house in order. But for those that believe, there's a great day coming. You know,
Amen.
our families, everyone that we love, that loves Jesus, are going to a place. It's very special. And that's not mythology. That's not, you know, a fairy tale.
No,
That's very real.
Exactly, and I've heard it explained that death in our bodily or physical death is merely a change of clothes. That's how I've heard it explained. I wanted to point out one thing that you mentioned. It's not when you're talking about blood moons, and I got a couple of emails here unrelated to our discussion. From people who heard Standeo and us, Joe and I, and Standeo talking about blood moons, and a couple of emails saying, well, they're meaningless. And it's interesting because and I don't think you're saying this either. I don't think anyone's saying that a biblically significant event is going to happen on the very day, for example, of blood moon.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all, brother. I believe, actually, if you look at the chart, there are 4 blood moons, and then there are 4 eclipses. There are 2 full eclipses and 2 partial. I think God has given us clearly 4 warnings to Israel and 4 warnings to the Gentiles, because God communicates through the sun to the Gentiles and through the moon through Israel. And I do not believe that things are going to happen. So I'm not putting God in the box. Something may very well happen on those days. But to be realistic, I think God warns us first. That's the whole point about what I call it the red zone that we're in. It is a time of extreme warning. God's saying, pay attention, get your house in order, things are about to happen. Now, to ignore that, the fact that they happen on feast days, and then looking at history, that God has actually done things in those times, I think it's very foolish to brush it off and say, oh, that's nothing. It's just a coincidence. There's no coincidences with God.
Exactly, and I like that. As we look at back in history, 4 blood moons. There were 4 blood moons in 1949 to 1950. Of course, that occurred after Israel became a nation in 1948. The 6-Day War of 1967 did not happen on the day of one of the eclipses either during that time period. So I suppose we could say that the eclipses, for example, coming in 2014, 2015, are signs by themselves. And the way I look at it too, and tell me if you agree with this, is that God made the heavens for our benefit as almost like a theater.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then we find this in Genesis. That's right. We find this in Genesis, that God created the heavens and the stars and the moon for signs and seasons and for communication. As things pass to what's called the Maseroth, which is the Jewish astrological signs in the heavens. And we're not talking about astrology, guys. We're not living our lives by the stars. We're receiving what God is saying in those things in signs. We're going to get signs in the end time. That's coming from a loving Father. He's not going to do anything, that's going to surprise everyone. The Bible says that He tells His people first. So to me, it's a communication. God's telling His children something.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in our conversation, you had it was kind of I thinking back at our conversation off air and I found that some of the things that you said pretty interesting. Some of the things that you have found in your research Bible codes and and I can't remember exactly what you said, but from Oprah to Obama to to the apocalypse or something like that. How do some of the figures, the entertainment figures of today, and let's go with Oprah for example. I mean, how in the world and why would somebody like this be put in the? By the way, I'm going to have to ask you if my name's in there or if our name's in there, Joe and I. I don't know if we want to know, but anyway, seriously, we're probably not that significant anyway. But that said, somebody like Oprah, who does have a command of a lot of people and influence,
Right.
and Obama, you kind of indicated that you found something there. Are you comfortable talking about that? I mean,
right. Yes, I can. Listen, we got to remember that there are principalities and dark forces in control, no matter who they're manipulating. Now, Oprah, and I'm not, judging her, but she has a form of godliness, and denies the power of God. She has her own way to God, and that's her way. She mixes a lot of Eastern philosophy and things that do not, go with God.
Okay, we're going to turn something off, guys.
Now, this is very seductive, in other words, and it's leading millions of people down the wrong road, believing that they're doing the right thing because it feels good, Now, the fact that she, with the command of people, endorsed the other O, saying he is the one, there's so much there in that symbology that should indicate something diabolical is going on. This guy came from nowhere and made the presidency, had made 2 terms, and will probably go down in history as the worst president ever. This is a blessed nation, guys, but it's also a nation that's turned its back on God. So what happens? God gives us a leader out of judgment. Same thing happened to the children of Israel when they went under captivity under Nebuchadnezzar. The Bible calls Nebuchadnezzar as God's anointed. This does not mean that Nebuchadnezzar was a righteous man. He was actually very wicked. But God used him as a tool to punish his people. That's why he was called anointed. The same thing applies here. Because we are so deep in sin and rebellion against God, and I do believe this is a covenant nation with God, founded on principles of Christianity, that we are in the condition that we're in now with this administration. It's very sad when you think about it, but at the same time, there is hope. God has promised his people. This is just a process. His will be done, and it has to be bad before it gets good. It goes back to the saying of it's darkest right before the dawn, and I believe that's where we are.
Is the United States, is the United States in the Bible code, or have you found it? Have you looked for it?
Yes, I have. And if you go and look in some of my archives there, I did find a term called the fall of the United States. And I can tell you just from initially a quick search on that, and it was very apparent right off the bat, the 2 main sins that come up, guys, and I'm not judging people. I'm telling you that God is a God of righteousness and he hates sin. The 2 sins against this nation in that table, homosexuality, the gay marriage, and abortion. These are the 2 main sins that God has against this nation. among others. But those are the two main ones that hurt us really bad. The other is really the Chrislam and the mixing of stuff. The harlotry. This is the harlotry from Revelation. That is the other. This country is in a spiritual last step. Yes. That's a very good term. Bankruptcy. Bankrupt of God. That's good.
Well, yeah. I think we do know that. What about the now? Research or not, I know you're very astute in Middle East affairs. You've got a good biblical worldview. Here we are, and we had a program with Stan Dale last night, folks.
No way, Han. Why are they beating the cats to death? I thought I didn't tell you this. I'm worried that when the famine comes, people are going to eat their pets. So I wonder if that's what's going on in China.
Yeah. Didn't catch that 2 hours last.
Yeah, the Chinese are very, very brutal. They're a very brutal people. They're not, very brutal people.
Stan Dale. It's in our archives. Very, very good. But we're talking about a Middle East peace process here. And of course, the intent is to get it done by the 29th of April. Joe, I think that's what, yeah, okay.
Really?
Yeah,
29th of what?
29th
of April?
And you remember when the virus first come out, people in China, someone in the Chinese press says you can catch it from cats. So they were throwing their cats from the high-rise apartments. Do you remember that? When it first started, they were already throwing out their cats out the window. They're a very brutal race, extremely brutal.
Wow.
Right.
And it's like they got their scholars and they're smart people, but they're psychopaths. They've got no compassion.
Well, that is one of the eclipses.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what are your thoughts on the? Obviously, we know that Israel is God's timepiece. It's God's barometer. It's God's nation.
Right.
And here we are, brother.
That's right. And we know the warning against dividing God's land. And what do you know? Even with the Harbinger series that Jonathan Cohn put out, we've got world leaders quoting the Bible and have no idea the prophetic ramifications of their words. It's no different here. I can't, if they read the Bible, I can't see how they don't understand that dividing God's land is a big no-no. And it's a matter of keeping our eye on it, guys, and really watching. That's the whole point, is watching what happens, being vigilant, and understanding what we're seeing. And these events you can pull it right out of the Bible. Every day is something new coming out. What's going to emerge? Well, some people have their opinions about who the XE is and when he will be revealed. But, I think God's people know beforehand, even before we're out of here. And I believe that information is left behind with the people that have to deal with the wrath. In other words, and they will know. The story we get from Ruth and Boaz is there's the four corners that are left behind for the gleaning to feed those soldiers and those people. I think that imagery goes to the time of Jacob's trouble too. That God's going to provide provision, not only food but information of what's going on to His people.
Hopefully, hopefully we will not have to endure the wrath and my personal beliefs, they really don't matter, but I prefer not to have to endure the wrath of God. I would suspect that the difference between the wrath and the tribulation would be extremely severe, but
yes.
And we I suppose one of the things I was just looking for, I'd written something down here. about the rapture, because I know when we talk about the rapture, it's almost like it's a party stopper. Let me tell you.
Oh, I know. Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and people have different positions, and they really dig in and they say, "Oh no, this is right or that's right. This is biblically sound." And I would prefer putting my attention elsewhere rather than arguing about the timing of the rapture.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you mentioned something, and I've heard this term used before, Shemitah.
Yes.
The seventh year. Explain that, the Shemitah.
The Shemitah is it's on a sabbatical count, and it goes along with Jubilees, and it's a way of God of timing, I believe, for God. Now, Jonathan Cohen pointed out that it, when 9/11 happened, it began a cycle for America, very full of symbols, and Jesus said, "I thank you, Father, that you've hidden these things from the wise and prudent, but you've revealed them to babes." And that's what we're seeing. The babes of Christ, those Gentiles or believers in Yeshua are seeing the symbols and the signs take place. And to some people, it's hidden. They call it psychobabble or just conspiracy theories run wild or whatever. But we know with confidence in God that we are seeing these things, take place. The Shemitah. It's a cycle, and it's a way of God, I believe, getting everybody in the correct timing. In other words, getting on the same sheet of music. Specific things happen on these days, and Jonathan pointed that out. The economic collapse with 777, and this happening at a time of God's appointed. Coincidence? No, I don't believe so.
Now, the Shemitah is what, the seventh year? I said
it's the seventh year. That's right. It goes 1 through 6. It's just like a week of in this.
Do you reckon they're going to go back to lockdowns, Han? They're sort of gone here now. We're way past all that. Do you reckon you guys are going to go into lockdown again?
They being the Sabbath, except we're talking about weeks of years. So every seventh year would be the Shemitah. And, of course, that is when, in agricultural terms, the land was supposed to rest. Now, applying it to symbolically to our economic system, it applies there as well. What's happening with us, and you can see it every day in the news, things are just getting worse and worse. And this is God trying to get our attention and trying to get us to repent and turn back to Him. Now, by the way, I've seen 3 sevens everywhere. 777 or 7 days appearing 3 times in a lot of my tables, which is indicating to me the significance of the 3 sevens, which is God's number. The Shemitah we're fixing to come into will be the 3rd one. And I agree with Mark on this, that this is the 3rd strike. This is the last one.
It's interesting you say that, because we had talked off air before this interview, and you had mentioned something, and it brought something to mind here. You had mentioned the comet, the Shoemaker Levy 9, which broke into pieces back in, it was July 16th through the 22nd of 1990.
Okay, guys, here's something they never picked up with that Shoemaker Levy. There was 21 comets that struck the heel of Jupiter, was it? Jupiter or Saturn? I think it was Jupiter. Struck the heel of Jupiter. 21 comets hit the heel of Jupiter. 3 times 7, 21. That's God's number, sevens. So no one picked that up. I think it was 21 for a reason.
21 fragments. Now, it broke out in 21 pieces. Catastrophic effects, collided with Jupiter. It just so happens that weekend was also the weekend of the 9th of Av. And it was a Shemitah year.
Yep.
Diane, I was sort of looking forward to the end day, thinking, let's get this happening. But now it's actually food shortages and things like that. I'm not so sure I'm so keen for it. But we got to go through it. but I used to cheer it on. I'm not so sure now.
So what?
Like, there's nothing to cheer.
What's that telling you, and what's that telling us? What's this? What should that have said to us biblically?
You know, I think those were the preamble of to where we're at now. You know, the comics. I've been paying attention to comics since Haley's. When Haley came back around, and I think it was the late '80s, like '86, '87, maybe. That got my attention as a small boy because I remember God talking to me about Wormwood, Revelation 8, and what happens there. And it was clear to me that something impacts the earth, whether it be an asteroid or something hits the earth. This begins the wrath, by the way. So I started paying attention to comics. The next one was Schumacher Levy. That was spectacular in what happened because it was like nuclear bombs going off on a catastrophic scale on Jupiter. And, you know, the numbers involved in that, and originally it was Schumacher Levy 9 because around that orbit, it was in 9 pieces. But when it came back around again, the gravitational pull of Jupiter actually lifted apart even further. It appeared like a string of pearls in the sky, and one after the other impacted Jupiter, which is the symbolic also that the planet Jupiter. And we had Hale Bob, another one. And by the way, guys, after each comet appearance, usually within 4 years, war breaks out. So the fact that we've seen comets, and another one which comes to mind is the one that happened on Hanukkah. You know, we had one that come through and it broke into pieces. There was another one called Lovejoy that appeared at Christmas time. Previous to that, all indicators, I believe. God said, look at the stars and what I'm telling you there, and that includes comets, you know. So
well, going back to what you said too about Shemitah, and I did not understand the significance of this, and like I said, when you had spoken about this earlier, and folks, Steve, just try to follow my inarticulate voice here, I guess. We had the comet Shoemaker-Levy 9, this on 16 through 22 July 1994. Okay, that was the Shemitah year. Now that's the 7th year. Okay,
right.
Advanced 7 years from 1994. That's 2001.
And guess what happened then?
Yeah. We saw, of course, 9/11, but the other thing that goes unnoticed largely is that on September 17th of 2001, the day before Rosh Hashanah, the Dow Jones average saw its biggest drop ever. And guess what percent it dropped?
777. That's
right.
Yep.
You know, and what happened 7 years later on September 20th, 2008? The day before Rosh Hashanah, the Dow fell 777, or another 7%.
Yeah.
What are we seeing here? I mean, you know.
It's clear. It's clear, brother. God is telling us something. And, you know, I think our cycle of God's judgment on us happened at 9/11, even though the 7 year before that, when Schumacher Levy 9, I think that was the indicator to pay attention to what was going on. I think he was establishing the cycle then of what was about to happen. And if you pay attention to current events, it's been a downward spiral ever since. You know, this try to recover. You know, when Obama comes in, oh, it's going to be better. We're going to turn things around, and it's just been a catastrophe. You know, and it's just gotten worse and worse, and that's what it's going to be. You know, sad to say, guys, I do not believe America will ever recover economically again.
Well, and this brings us, you know, we went through 1994, and we went to 2001, and then 2008. Now, 7 years more, another Shemitah to 2015.
Yes.
Oh boy.
Yes. Yeah.
And
that's why I believe the hammer falls on that day, or that time, by the way.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So so we're looking at just from your research in Bible codes, and I know this is not a crystal ball,
Right.
but economic collapse, war, what?
Both of them, brother. Both are coming up. And, I reconstructed a Blazeson table. It was called Messiah 2014. And again, let me just explain something here, guys. If you follow him and you see him talking about the Messiah over and over again, and that's because of a term or something in Yiddish, and I hope I say this right, it's called Kodam Shemamiyah, which means there's an imminent return of the Messiah. Of course, they're looking for a man, and they don't realize that he's already come, and he's coming again this time.
Actually, I'm not on Facebook. Sometimes I've got nothing to say. I'm just waiting to jump in on a line.
There's a glorious king. We're in the times of what they call the Messiah. There's no doubt about that. This is the second coming. This is what it's all about. The end of days. And
the chats go up on the laptop. Look, that's my laptop. And the chats go up about 2 or 3 minutes before they appear on my tablet. That's why there's a minute or two delay.
It's not a crystal ball, but I believe it's an indicator. It's some way to validate the times, because they've been saying it for hundreds of years. This is the time of return of Christ. And that's why they say there'll be scoffers that come saying, where is the promise of his return? I think God makes a way to make it very clear where we at. Even though there's been people before us, Harold Camping being one to all these predictions about the second coming of Christ. The thing about it is we've got to keep in mind that Satan comes before to sow doubt and this discourse and confusion, and that's where all these people play a part before God starts.
Diane, I can't believe that people think that once you're saved, once you become Christian, you cannot sin anymore. I can't believe people think that, but they do. Look at Preacher Boy. He calls, look, I smoke. I don't bag someone for smoking because I smoke myself. I'm not a hypocrite, but I couldn't help myself with the Preacher Boy when I said, what about you smoking? And he said, oh, that's a burnt offering to Jesus. He also said you can have abortions. And as you know, he said, Diane, you told me this, I never saw him say it, but he's had sex with his stepkids. So he thinks he can't sin. Gee, they're in for a rude shock. If once you're saved, you don't sin anymore, there's no point of the mark. The mark is there to tempt the believers, the one who is in Christ. Like the lost, they're gone anyway. But the mark is designed to corrupt us Christians. And if it's once saved, always saved, and you can completely sin, there's no point of the mark.
Revealing things to his people is sowing that confusion.
In Daniel 12:4, the Bible's.
Hey, Diane, Diane lets me know when Preacher Boy's going live and we tag team him. And Diane, I say to you, don't I? I say, I bet I can get him to say my name. And about 5 comments later, he brings me up. Oh, this Colin McIntosh. And when he does, I'm inside, I laugh my head off. Because I tell Diane, I bet I can get him to say my name. And he does, because I attack him so well. It's so fun.
References in the last days, knowledge will be increased.
Is that true or not, Diane? I say to you on Skype, I bet you I can get him to say my name. And within 5 comments, he's saying my name. You know why I don't ring in? You know he does that StreamYard thing he does where he can ring in? Because he knows the Bible. He twists it his way, but he can say, look up John 14, and it means this. I can't do that. I know the stories in the Bible. I believe them, and I know when to reference them, but I can't actually say, look up Peter chapter 2:5 to see this. So that's why I don't take his challenge up on StreamYard. But I do have fun joking about it.
Seeing that, of course, it's not only secular knowledge but biblical insight as well.
Right.
Would you classify this the explorer?
He was talking about you too, Diane. You and I are the ones who rub him up the most, rub him up the wrong way the most.
And research of the Bible code. I mean, is this the expansion of our biblical knowledge?
Yes, it is. As a matter of fact, if you search Daniel, in the book of Daniel by itself, it becomes very clear that Daniel is highly encoded about the end times. In fact, if you read the plain text, God shows him the time of the end. It affects Daniel so bad that he gets physically sick for several days because he's so overwhelmed by what he sees. The angel reveals to him the time of the end. Now, when he says to seal up these words, I believe he's anointed Daniel when he wrote those words that things were hidden there about the end times.
Diane, post a link to the preacher so Han can get in on the act. We can all team up on him. Post a link if you don't mind to the preacher.
You go to Daniel 12:4, and guess what is encoded in that line? Bible code.
I'm afraid to ask.
Bible code is right there, and it's clear to me that he's using the Bible code to unlock these sealed books: Daniel, Ezekiel, Revelation. I believe the codes play a big part in sealing those.
How great is that? I mean,
that's right, she did too.
Wow.
I tried to look him up, Diane, and I couldn't see him. I typed in the preacher and he didn't come up. So can you post a link for me in case I'm missing it? Please?
Well, we do know, and kind of equating what your research with the blood moons, for example. We've seen. Okay, there's not going to be another what you call the tetrad happening on the biblical holidays in this century. Now, so we can kind of take this perhaps as the last or the final bell, the last warning.
Okay, this is interesting, guys. They're talking about the tetrad. Oh, what happened here? No way, you go back to the beginning. Hang on. No, good. They're talking about the tetrad, and the tetrad features in the Avengers movies. It's energy that Loki controls, the tetrad. So it's interesting they're talking about the tetrad.
We've had, and I got an email from somebody who really took me to task for even saying, how can you even believe that the blood moons mean anything? But the first two tetrad times were after Israel became a nation, and then again when during the recapturing of Jerusalem. Now, so the upcoming one seems to be perhaps suggesting, based on what happened in 1948, 1967, that there's going to be a pretty major prophetic war involving Israel.
Right.
Wouldn't you say? I mean,
absolutely, and absolutely, and we're probably talking about Psalm 83, Ezekiel, somewhere along the lines that's going to fit in, and right now it's speculation. Chris, by the way, another code searcher friend of mine, has found a connection to Ezekiel 38 and to those events that we commonly, talk about and have our opinions about. And he's, his research has discovered that there is a connection to this administration. What that means for the future, guys, all we can do is see how it plays out. We put God in a box many times and say, oh, it can't be like this or it can't be like that. But then God blows our mind in many cases, and we realize, oh, yes, He can. And in many cases, it's symbolic. In many cases, it's literal. So it's up to Him how this is fulfilled. The thing about the abomination of desolation, in other words, I think that's going to be a highly symbolic event. And I think that's why Matthew points that out. Let the reader who reads understand.
I just checked that link out. I'm already subbed to him, but when I put in the preacher on the hourglass looking glass thing to search, it didn't come up. But I've got it. Thanks, Di.
And this Shemitah cycle, this next one in 2015, brother, and I'm telling you this in my best day of searching, in my best opinion, I really believe that's an economic collapse. And then what happens after that is probably war, because we're going to be very vulnerable. We're not going to be the big guy on the block anymore because we don't have the power. We don't have the money.
Oh, that's why we don't see you on Skypan. I never realised that. If you just sign in, you only have to sign in the once, and then type in the Skype channels you like. Diane created Misfits for Jesus, where all our guys sort of meet when I'm not going, or not even when I'm not going. It's just where our guys meet. And it's a good channel. It's a good Skype thing.
We can fight another war. We just can't do it. And there's going to be somebody to take our, take our block off.
Yeah, and as you've mentioned, there's three sections in the Bible that talk about the possibility of war. Isaiah 17, of course, we've got Psalm 83, and Bill Salas has written a number of, he's written a book, the Psalm 83 War, or Israelistine, and of course we have Ezekiel 38, and looking at this, and let me get your thoughts on this. I would think that the Psalm 83 war, which results in making Israel becoming a larger and more powerful nation, is going to happen first.
Happen first. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I agree. That's been a trend too. Israel is they miraculously overcome the enemy and gain more ground. That's been the trend. So I agree with you. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. All right.
This is probably going to inflame the rest of the Muslim world, and that's probably why Ezekiel 38 comes around, because they're really upset with Israel at that point and want revenge.
Wow, and that makes sense. Anything about, we've got about 10 minutes left of the program, 9 minutes left of the program. Anything about Russia, Ukraine, what's taking place over there right now? Have you found anything directly, or have you looked, that's taking place right now with Russia, Ukraine, and that type of thing, or?
Actually, I haven't, brother, really, to tell you the truth. I was focused on other things before the conference, and then when I got back, I continued on with that. But Chris, my brother, who also searches, has been looking at things like that. That's probably an area I need to pay attention to. But this is the thing, guys. There's so much to cover. I can't do it all. You know what I'm saying? I'm so caught up in so many different topics on some different areas that literally every day I could pull something out of the news and form a table on just from that. But that's something I need to probably pull up and see what the significance is in that. But either way, it's all biblical. It's all prophetic. This is not just limited to America and Israel. We're talking global things that are taking place.
Okay. And this is a good question. This is a rather technical question from Roger out of Seattle. Wants to know, if you were to undertake a mission, for example, of finding, I don't know, the word Chicago. That's not in his email. That's my question. If you were to say, okay, I'm interested in Chicago, how long would it take you from start to finish, using the computer programs, to locate and then analyze that particular word or phrase?
I could find Chicago in probably 5 minutes. Now, analyzing every verse that goes through there and then coming up with or finding all the ELS terms could take days, weeks, months. I've worked on tables for months, even up to a year, tables because God continues to show me things in it. You can find things very fast, like the tetrad table that's put out. I actually worked on it a couple of hours before I left town. So there's still much there to find. So, you know, it's not very difficult to find an access term. Chicago is probably very common because Chicago is a big city. There's lots that's happened there, so it's probably there a lot. You know, it's a matter of going through it all and just seeing what it is. You know, seeing what's there. It's very tedious, even though we're not counting letters by hand. The actual looking at the table and going verse by verse by verse, you know, can take a lot of time.
Interesting. All right. In the remaining few moments we have of our show, and I want to thank you very much for your gracious gift of time tonight. I mean, it's certainly you're a busy man. You're looking at these various codes, but what's the
Hang on, I got something lined up. There it is.
When change happens, like a seat change, think Yui. We're a car and home insurer that could save you money by covering you for where your life's at right now. Yui. You insured.
I'm just crying at the front door because there's not enough hours in the day to make sure that they're getting everything they need.
It's disgusting that you haven't done your job, Mr. Morrison. Vote to make aged care staff ratios law. Authorised by Annie Butler, Australian Nursing and Midwifery Federation, Melbourne.
Okay, guys, I don't know this dude at all. First time I'm hearing him.
Hello, friends. Greg Braden here. Welcome to this edition of our Q&A. I'm going to begin this edition with an apology. In a recent broadcast, a recent Q&A, in passing, I spoke of prophecy. I mentioned prophecy. I described a couple of prophecies, the Hopi prophecy and Prophecy Rock, and the biblical prophecies in what is now known as the Torah codes or the Bible codes. And I made mention of those with the assumption that you, my community, had seen some of the previous content that I'd done, either through Gaia. We did an extensive discussion of the Bible codes through the Missing Links series, portions of which were seen on this channel, or in other conversations. Your letters, your emails let me know that my assumption was incorrect, and that's why I'm apologizing. And that's what I want to talk to you about a little bit today. Actually, this is really good news because what it tells me is that we have new viewers. We have viewers that have not been with me since the Missing Links series was aired through Gaia TV and on this channel, and new viewers that may not have seen some of the other episodes. I'm going to invite you to go back and check them out. They're still available here on this channel. But I want to take this opportunity, if you don't have the opportunity, if you don't have the opportunity to go back and look at those, I'm going to do my very best. I'm going to summarize for you with a little presentation precisely what the Bible code is, what it's all about, what the science says about it, and what it says about where we are right now, about the events that are happening in our lives and in our world right now. Let me just talk a little bit briefly before I begin the presentations. Prophecy in general. Scientists believe that there's a close association between what we in the past have called prophecy and what scientists today call remote viewing. Now, those of you familiar with remote viewing know what I'm talking about. If you're not familiar with remote viewing, it is the ability of an individual to sit in a moment in space and time, presumably any moment in any space and any time, and through a deep state of intuition that we all have available to us, they are able to access timelines of events that are occurring in real time.
Okay, guys, he's talking about remote viewing. I've looked into remote viewing, and when they go back in time, let's say they go back to the Star Wars, because they claim there was a big Star Wars thing happening, they twist it. Remote viewers say Christ isn't Jesus. Christ isn't God, he's part of the higher consciousness. And the Bible says, do not be participants, do not be observers of time. And remote viewing is doing exactly that. And I've watched a lot of them, and some of it's true and some of it's not. But you got to be wise to know which is which.
Or have yet to occur into our future. Now, the reason that this is possible, I'll talk about when we get into the presentation. Einstein told us that time exists. All events in time always exist. All right, so it's a really strange way of thinking about time, but it means that the past and the present and the future exist simultaneously. This is what Einstein said. And if that's true, and if we have the ability, the intuitive ability through states of consciousness to navigate the timelines, then we should be able to at least view and perhaps interact with the events of the past, the present, or the future. So we know this is successful. We know this works because the U.S. military explored remote viewing beginning in 1980s. It was actually applied in the Gulf War in 1990 very successfully. For example, when remote viewing is used to locate missile silos, Scud missiles in the Iraqi desert without risking the lives of troops to go in and find those missiles. So we know that the principle of remote viewing is valid, it works. The physics is still being explored. And scientists believe they understand enough to be able to apply it, and by applying it, they will develop a deeper understanding of the physics. Well, I believe that the parallels between the remote viewing as we know it today and the prophecy as we have known it in the past are close enough that we can use those principles to talk about the prophecy, biblical prophecy, for example, and what it means in terms of what's happening in our world today, specifically in Eastern Europe today. So the idea of remote viewing or prophecy, an individual is able to attune to a timeline of events that are unfolding. So they're in point A and they are looking into the future or into the past, but in this case, we're talking about the future of point B. If nothing changes between point A and when the events of point B play out, then what they have seen may very probably come to pass. However, and this is where it gets it's a little tricky, because of what are known as bifurcations in the time-space continuum. You and I are part of those bifurcations. What that means is that between point A and point B on a linear timeline, any choice that is made can deviate, can cause the events to deviate from that point B. One little choice can cause, so for example, a discussion, a negotiation at the peace table may not bring an end to the war, but it may be enough to deviate from the possibility of that war escalating. So the bifurcation allows for a shift. And now you're looking down a different timeline, and the original prophecy that was recorded may not be valid. Nostradamus, looking from his day he went as far as the year 3000. So many things have happened between his day and the year 3000 that have caused so many bifurcations. Some of his visions, as accurate as they were in the 20th century, may not be accurate in the...
Still up. Cuppa. At our care, you can trust your family. See, this is where it gets interesting. Will be our family too. Our care. 5-star aged care.
The performance was enchanting, completely captivating on so many different levels.
From the beginning to the end, just hypnotizing.
I feel better about the world. I feel uplifted.
It touches you. It really does. Every American needs to see it.
Thank you very much to the director and whoever created it.
It's just amazing. I don't even know what astounding. I don't know another word to describe it.
In due parole, divino.
And the expertise of the dancers was really, really strong.
The men, when they jump, they just popped right off the stage.
Into the future, because we're causing those bifurcations. This is true of indigenous prophecy, the Hopi prophecy, talk about this. It's true of biblical prophecy. So I mentioned the biblical prophecy specifically because it has been studied scientifically. Statisticians, mathematicians have for a long time manually known that there are codes in the first 5 books of the Christian Bible, or the first 5 books that are the Hebrew Bible. It's called the Torah. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy are those first 5 books in the Old Testament, and they are the Torah in the Hebrew tradition. They share this information. There's something unique about those first 5 books that does not apply to the rest of the Christian Bible. It doesn't apply to any other known document of record. And I want to talk to you about what that is, what the statisticians have discovered, how it works to be able to query this information database, and what it may be saying about our world today. Now, before I even begin this, I'm going to say this now, and then I'll emphasize it in the presentation. Prophecy cannot tell us exactly what's going to happen. And when we're talking about remote viewing, we're talking about quantum possibilities. And in the quantum world, we can never know precisely when and where something will happen. Quantum possibilities are all about probabilities. So we can know with a certain degree of certainty when an event,
trying to get rid of the glare,
may occur. Maybe it's a 70% probability or a 90% probability. But because it is a quantum possibility, it's not locked into stone because we have choice. And that's the whole point. We are never locked into any of the most frightening prophecies, no matter how frightening, no matter where they come from, no matter what you've seen. I'm going to show you in the biblical prophecy, specifically in the Bible code, where the code tells us,
I can't get rid of these glare.
We always have the opportunity to change what the code is showing us. We always have a choice. We may not know that we have a choice. We may not feel that we have a choice. When it comes into quantum possibility, it comes down to quantum possibilities, we always have the ability to make a choice, at least enough of a choice to create a bifurcation, to shift the timeline from the most frightening possibilities that we're
best I can get it, guys.
About biblical prophecy. You know, there are a lot of very frightening possibilities in the book of Revelation, for example, and in other books as well. So what I'd like to do, let's talk about the Bible code specifically, the Torah code, more commonly known as the Bible code. And from that, we begin to understand the science of how the queries are made and what those codes are actually saying to us. So when we talk about the Bible code, we are in fact talking about specifically the Torah code. The code or the codes that are embedded into those first 5 books of the Christian Old Testament and the Hebrew book, or the Hebrew text itself, that is called the Torah. The Torah is one of the most mysterious texts, spiritual religious texts that we have available to us today. Still a lot of controversy even over where it came from and how it originated. Scholars have yet to agree 100% on where this text came from. There are some scholars, biblical scholars, that believe that Moses wrote the text as it was dictated to him. Others believe that Moses was handed the texts from the experience in the event that he had on Mount Sinai when he was engulfed in the cloud and the fire, and he heard the name of God and he heard the voice of God, that he was actually given the Torah. And yet other scholars believe the Torah was an accumulation of texts that were written by humans over a period of time. As mysterious as the origins are, what we know is that it is one of the most stable texts of the religious texts available. The Dead Sea Scrolls pushed the date of the Torah back over 1,000 years beyond what the original dates had believed to have been. And we now know that 3,200 years BP, before present, is when the Torah emerged. However that happened. Now, what makes this so interesting is when we look at copies of the Torah, modern Torahs that we have today, and we look at these ancient copies, very, very few discrepancies exist in the text. It is a very stable text. Approximately 23 letters have been changed over those 3,200 years, and that is almost unheard of when you think of all the translations that's gone through in different languages that it's gone through. But this is the whole point, and what the scholars, what the rabbis have always said about the Torah is that it is more than a book to be read. It actually is a map of time. And because they believed it was a map of time, they were very careful to duplicate every letter in a copy to be precisely what it was in the original. Before we had computers and printers, this was all done by hand. And if the rabbi, the scholar, would be 90% into the replication.
Liberal and Labor have racked up a $1 trillion debt. This will trigger interest rates to rise more than
of a Torah and make a mistake. What they said was that entire document had to be discarded because if they changed one letter,
okay, that's as good as I can get to Glare.
Change one letter in the history or the future of the world, and I think you begin to understand why this is. There was a rabbi called the Genius of Vilna. It was Rabbi Elijah ben Solomon Salman. He was a Kabbalist, and he summed up what I'm saying to you beautifully. What he said, and these are his words, he said, the rule is that all that was, is, and will be until the end of time is included in the Torah, from the first word to the last word, and not merely in the general sense, but as to the details of every species and each one individually, and details of everything that happened to him from the day of his birth until the end. That's a direct quote. What he's saying is that the Torah is a map of all living beings, including you and me. And I'll describe how specific this is in just a moment. But this takes us beyond a religious document. So I'm going to invite you to consider this conversation of the Torah as a mysterious and sacred text that was left to the people of the earth to help us to understand who we are and the potentials that we have in our lives and in our future, and the role that we play in determining how those potentials play out. You can think of it that way. It takes on, for many people, it takes on a whole new meaning. So the Torah was originally received, and I always laugh when I think of this. If you're my age or maybe older, or maybe you've seen the reruns of the book, the movie, Exodus, where Charlton Heston played Moses. And indelibly engraved upon my mind is the image of Charlton Heston in his robes and his white hair and his white beard, and he's staggering down from the top of Mount Sinai, and in each arm he's carrying these huge stone tablets that were given to him, the 10 Commandments and the Torah on the top of Mount Sinai. That is the way we've been conditioned to think of the Torah. But modern scholars are offering us a little bit different idea. First of all, what mathematicians and what the scholars are saying is the Torah was originally received with no break in the sentences, with no punctuation, It was received in the Hebrew language, which is a language that does not use vowels. So it was a document of consonants, a one continuous string of 304,805 characters. That number is important. So the original Torah was believed to have been received as one continuous string of information. 304,805 characters, not on a parchment, not in a book, not etched onto stone, big stone tablets that Charlton Heston is carrying down the side of Mount Sinai. Rather, it was etched into a mysterious stone that fit in the palm of the hand. Now, we don't have any good representations of this, but if you can think, it's a very different way of thinking. If you can think of this stone as fitting into the palm of a hand, and if a high intelligence truly was visiting Moses, who or whatever you believe that intelligence is, if you believe it was God, whatever you believe God to be, or if you believe it's a higher intelligence from another dimension or from another world, it would make sense that such a sacred and profound document, as you're going to see, would be left in something that would not be destroyed easily like a parchment would be. Now, in mid-1990s, 1994, a group of mathematicians under the guidance, the leadership of Elihu Rips was the mathematician's name, published a theory about the Torah. It was published in a peer-reviewed journal called Statistical Science. You can see volume 9. And here's a copy of the original paper, and it was under the title Equidistant Letter Sequences in the Book of Genesis. Now, that sounds pretty benign. You say, well, what's that have to do with prophecy? The way this works is that there is a mathematical algorithm that allows mathematicians and statisticians to search.
Yeah, and he's a little bugger. Around 4 a.m., he starts walking on you to wake you up. If you put him out in the hallway, you got to put a door stopper there because he'll put his paw under and rattle the door to wake you up. Or if you throw him outside into the barley room where we have our barbecues, throw him out there and shut the window, he'll jump on the fly screen and peck that. So he's a little bugger. He's very high maintenance.
The Torah for meaningful information, for patterns and sequences of words that show up beyond what could be a chance, beyond what could be a fluke. And what they're saying in the abstract, it's saying it's been noted that when the book of Genesis is written as two-dimensional arrays, that equidistant letter sequences, and I'm going to share with you what that is. Spelling words often appear in close proximity. It says the effect is significant at the level of 0.000000004. That means it's a very small probability that this is a fluke. One of the tests that was made was a test of the names of historical rabbis. It was believed that if the Torah contained all that was, is, and will ever be, that the names of these rabbis should show up in the text. So a group of code specialists from the United States were invited to participate in this. These were code specialists from the intelligence agencies, NSA, CIA. And there were a group of historic rabbis, and they went to search for their names to see if they were, in fact, in the Torah. Well, not only were the names in the Torah, it was mind-boggling what else was in there. The names, the dates of their birth, the dates of their death, the cities that they lived in, where they practiced their tradition, the people that they practiced with. And what the experts said was our referees were baffled by this. The prior beliefs made them think that Genesis could not possibly contain meaningful references to modern day, or in this case, later day individuals. Yet when the authors carried out the additional analyses and the checks, the effect persisted. The paper is thus offered to statistical science readers as a challenging puzzle. So we don't know what's happening, but here's what's happening. All right, so how is it possible? How is it possible that meaningful information could be of modern day events, what we would call prophecy, could be written into a book that was delivered to the people of the earth over 3,000 years ago in a fixed format. How could that information be in there 3,000 years ago? Who 3,000 years ago knew about the events of the modern world? Well, to answer that question, we've got to unlock these codes a little bit. So I'm going to move quickly because I want to honor your time. And I just want to give you a sense for how this works. The modern Hebrew alphabet that you see on your screen is inside of the red box. For every letter in the Hebrew alphabet, there is a mathematic code, a number associated with that letter. Now, I want you to know that this is true of every alphabet known to exist on the face of the earth today. Every ancient alphabet, whether it's cuneiform or Sumerian or Egyptian hieroglyphs or kanji, Japanese kanji or Chinese letters, Greek, the Greek alphabet, the Phoenician alphabet, the English alphabet, every alphabet has always had a mysterious number associated with it. The number is constant. It never changes. The mystery is, where did the number come from? And I talk about this in other programs. I won't do it here.
This is a store. And this is a store. And what about this? Totally.
Here, where do those numbers come from? But the fact that each letter can be converted to a number makes the computer search much easier when it comes to searching the code, and that's the point. So for the Torah code, what happens is all of those 308,000 plus letters are converted into its number equivalent. All right, so you get this long sequence of continuous numbers, no punctuation, no breaks between the sentences or anything like that. All right, and then this information, the total of 304,805 numbers, is arranged into a matrix, again, with no punctuation, no spaces. But here's the key. And if you are a mathematician, you're going to understand exactly what I'm saying here. This is not a fixed matrix of X and Y coordinates. It is a dynamic matrix that changes with the queries. Now, this gets really, really very sophisticated, very interesting. Okay, it is arranged initially into a matrix of 64 rows, 4,772 numbers each. 64 rows, 4,772 characters each. And then what happens is each time a query is made, the results of that query reposition the rest of the matrix to reflect the impact of that query. This is a dynamic matrix. This is so sophisticated. It only works with the Torah. The researchers tried popular books of war and peace, big books of war and peace, Moby Dick. They tried the phone books. Back in the old days, we used to have printed telephone books. And what I'm going to share with you only works with the first 5 books of the Christian Bible and the Hebrew Bible, the Torah. This dynamic, multi-dimensional matrix. So once this matrix, this dynamic matrix is in place, it's in the computer, then there are very complex algorithms that will search for patterns. And they will do so using what are called ELS sequences, equidistant letter search sequences, or ELS algorithms. These are very, very cool. Rabbis used to do this manually, and it's said that it made them crazy. There are rabbis that literally went crazy doing this with a quill pen and parchment, but they knew the codes were in there before computers were ever developed. So what is an ELS code? It's also called a skip code, and that's the way I'm going to refer to it. A skip code is a number that identifies how many letters you will pass over before you grab one of the letters in the matrix. So you begin with a letter, and then the skip code tells you how many letters you will go until you grab the next letter, and how many letters you'll go until you grab the next letter. So, for example, a skip code of 10, you would begin with the letter that you've chosen, and then you would go 10 letters and grab that letter. 10 more letters and grab that letter to determine the sequence. And those letters would, if it was the correct skip code, it would reveal a meaningful message coming from the biblical text. So let me give you an example, and this is an example that rabbis have known for a long time. They originally discovered this manually, and it's in the book of Genesis. The name of the Torah is actually encoded into the book of Genesis using a skip code of 50. So remember, Genesis is the first book of the Torah. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. So the way this works is the first T. So the top line that you're seeing on your screen is read from your right to your left. This is the way that Hebrew is read. There are no vowels. Specifically, there are vowels that are implied. All right. So there will be no O because O is a vowel. So the first T that we see from that T, if we use a skip code of 50 and you go to the left, there are no other T's. And then you go to the right and you begin on the second level. And on the 50th letter, there is the O. And then you do the same thing again. You go 50 more and there's the R. You go 50 more and there's the H. Remember, there is no O because it is a vowel. So using a skip code of 50, the word Torah shows up in the book of Genesis, early in the book of Genesis. There are very complex algorithms that are used to do this and computer programs. And right now, to the best of my knowledge, those programs are only working on PCs. They're not made for the Mac. There is a way that you can use software on the Mac to make the Mac look like a PC. And then you can run the code. I know that's a little complex to do that. But I want to give you an example. What you're seeing is a screenshot of some of those search algorithms on the actual Torah code. And what you're seeing, and the only reason we're not going to read this, we'll read some other ones, but what I want you to see, and what I want you to see here, is that the codes can be vertical. They can go top to bottom, bottom to top, the search. It can go left to right, right to left, and it can also go diagonally. And what happens is when a meaningful letter sequence or a phrase or a word is
yeah, same here, Han. We pay about $4 for a dozen eggs as well.
Found within a certain distance of another word, it is called statistically significant. I mean, if it's, like, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of letters, it probably doesn't mean much. But when these words are in close proximity or when they actually cross one another, and you'll see this is where the messages begin to appear. Now, this whole concept was made popular, brought to the public attention in the mid-90s, specifically, and then with a book in 97 by a journalist named Michael Drosnin. Sadly, Michael Drosnin has passed, so he is no longer involved in this, but it is through his journalism that he published this first book called The Bible Code, and I believe four other books following, Bible Code 1, 2, 3, and 4, to bring us up to date on what was happening in the world. And the way that he did it was very profound, because in the Bible Code, there was a series of sequences saying that the Israeli prime minister at the time in the 90s would be assassinated. Now, some of you, I know, have not learned about this in school. Others of you weren't alive when this was happening. So I'll just go over this very briefly as an example. And then we'll use this example to go through other queries very, very quickly once you understand how this works. So the Israeli prime minister between 1983 and 1995, his name was Yitzhak Rabin. He was a man of peace. And if you know him, or if his name is familiar, you may remember that he worked under the guidance of Bill Clinton. When Bill Clinton was our president, Bill Clinton was the one that got Yasser Arafat, the Palestinian, the leader of the Palestinians on the right-hand side, and Yitzhak Rabin, the Israeli prime minister on the left. He got them together for the peace accords. They're called I believe it's the Oslo Peace Accords. where the two men in principle agreed to create a peace. This is the closest we've ever come to peace between these.
Find yourself here.
These two factions that are brothers and sisters in blood, and they truly are. They have the same heritage. This is the closest we ever came. There were people that did not want that peace to happen, and one of those individuals was a man that assassinated Yitzhak Rabin, and he did it on November 5th, 1995. The reason I'm sharing this is because the Bible code said that when the query was made, Michael Drosnin was working with the mathematicians, and they saw the assassination November 5th, 1995. And they warned Yitzhak Rabin that this would happen. He listened to their warnings, and he believed in the Torah code, and he said, if it's in the code, then it's meant to be, and I'm not going to change my plans. I'm paraphrasing. He went forward with his day as he had planned his day, and the man that was identified in the Torah at the time of day that was identified in the Torah on the street that was identified in the Torah, in fact, took the life of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. That was what brought the Bible code into the headlines.
That's true.
That the fact that it so accurately described this event. So what I'm sharing with you here, this is a highlight, and I'm going to go to a computer screen. What you're seeing here is a portion of the Torah matrix. All right, Yitzhak Rabin is in the red. I just want you to see how these codes are revealed. Is in the red, so you see him vertically, and crossing him. It's not even, it's nearby, it's crossing him. Assassin who will assassinate actually crosses his name. Now, the bigger picture, there's a lot more information, and I want to share this with you. Here is the screenshot, and they're using geometric forms to highlight the different words. So in the circles, the name of Yitzhak Rabin is on a diagonal, and you see that. The name of the assassin who will assassinate crosses him. So it says an assassin will assassinate, and it crosses his name. The assassin's name is in the truncated pyramid in the upper left, the name, and his name, that says his name, and his name is on that same line to the right. His name is Amir. And in fact, Amir is the name of the assassin that took Yitzhak Rabin's life. So the question is, how could that information have been in a 3,000-year-old text? Well, what the scientists did, they said, what if Yitzhak Rabin had postponed his tour that day? He was on he was doing essentially a parade. What if he postponed that parade? So they entered the query into the Bible code, and it still said, name of assassin who will assassinate. Name of the assassin was Amir Yitzhak Rabin. But then it says assassination delayed. So if Yitzhak Rabin had postponed, he would have lived that day, perhaps not on to another day, because it said assassination was delayed. So these are the kinds of things that are showing up. Then the scholars began to go back and look in history and see what else could possibly be in this Bible code, in this Torah code. And the answer is everything. Everything, any event that you put in there is going to show up. These are major events. Here you see the atomic holocaust in Hiroshima. In the circles vertically, you see atomic holocaust. The triangles, you see Japan. The year is in the squares, crosses the atomic holocaust. It is the Hebrew year 5705, which translates into the Julian year, or the Christian year 1945. So 1945 actually crosses, and this is the only place this happens in the Bible code. There is nowhere, when all the queries are run, there is nowhere that says that this will happen as it did. During the Cold War years, there was a potential in the mid-1980s, and all the queries have been run since that time. Nowhere does it say nuclear holocaust, atomic holocaust. So I'm saying this because many people are concerned that we're going to have an all-out global war with mushroom clouds on every horizon. And I'm not saying that we couldn't have a limited nuclear exchange? I hope not.
Where in the Bible does it say on the cross, this is your mother, this is your son?
I hope and I believe that cooler heads will prevail. But if that happened, that is not an all-out Holocaust. That would be a limited, it's called the tactical nuclear exchange. It's a horrible term that has been coined in military circles. There are what are called tactical nuclear weapons designed to be used on the battlefield, much smaller in scale than what happened in Hiroshima. Very sad that anyone would even put the time and energy into developing a weapon like that called a tactical nuke. So that's my personal feeling. It's not my science. So this is how this works. And they began looking at other things. John F. Kennedy, the assassination of President John Kennedy. Here his name is in circles vertically. To die is actually in the same circle. The city of Dallas, where he was assassinated, is in there. And it goes on in more detail in other codes. It tells the name of the assassin, the street, the time of day, how it happened. Here it is. Name of the assassin is Oswald. You're seeing in the diagram. I forgot that I put this in there. Oswald is in the circles. He was a marksman. You see that in the diamonds. Name of the assassin who will assassinate. Very similar to what you saw with Yitzhak Rabin. 9/11. Before it happened, and this is really amazing. Here you see the Twin Towers vertically in the center in the circles. It knocked down in a truncated, it's almost like a trapezoid that you see twice. It happened 2 times. Airplane is in there, and in a more detailed query, you actually see the name of Bin Laden is in the green on the right-hand side of the code there.
Okay, and we got a big problem here because we all know Bin Laden didn't do 9/11. So this throws out this whole, man, that's bad enough. I'm nearly going to sack it.
Attack, thousands die. So you get the sense for how this works. But not only bad things, a lot of good things. The Torah codes described Obama's election. Here they say Barack Obama. They give his name. His name is spelled out in blue.
Yeah, that's enough, isn't it, Han? That he thinks Bin Laden's in the Bible code saying he done 9/11. This guy's got nothing more to say that I want to hear. I've got nothing else lined up, so if I can't find something decent, I might hang up. But let me see if I can find something decent. Hang on, guys. What have we got down here? Because, yeah. Okay, nah, it's still my history, which I like criminal stuff. Now you see TV. Okay, go back to the old stalwarts. Now you see TV. What have they got up lately? Oh, I can't do it. It's too long. Okay, I found something, guys.
Flexible home loans to suit your needs, including great rates, low fees and fast turnaround times. Isn't it time you said, I bank with Macquarie?
If Mother Nature doesn't get you, the isolation will. Alone, stream free on SBS On Demand.
Oh, the same guy. No,
hello, friends. Greg Braid.
Went to the wrong one. Sorry, guys. There it is.
And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast.
And them Bible codes, they look like they're bodgy, don't they? Because them Bible codes, this really big respected dude talking about Bible codes, he mentions Bin Laden doing 9/11. And there's, yeah, okay. I don't think the Bible codes are legit. I was going to buy the app that cost $160. I didn't know how to download it. I'm glad I didn't, because I haven't seen anything convincing from Bible codes. It's all been fluff and bubbles.
Rise up, rise up, rise up.
And I think they might even lie. You know how they're saying it's every 50 letters, you make a word up every 50 letters, and then they post where these letters show up. No one takes the time to count, okay, let's see if it's 50 letters. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you finally get up to, say, let's argue, it says C. Okay, then you look again, you count another 50 letters, it says H. You count again, it says no, and it says R, etc., until it says Christ. But I bet you no one's actually checked out the numbers. I think they could be lying, because don't forget, they're Zionist Jews and they're not nice people.
Who is able to make war with him?
Yeah, and I never knew whether to trust them or not. But when that guy brought up Bin Laden, and he's one of the most respected Bible code dudes, when he brought up Bin Laden, I knew it was phony. But yeah, okay. I couldn't keep playing him.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome once again to the Midnight Ride. My name is David Carrico, and as always, it's my great honor to invite each and every one of you into the Puritan Barn for the Midnight Ride with myself and John Pounders. Tonight, alien-human hybrids, a bombshell release of a document from the government, confirms many things that many of us have known for a long time and have been talking about. This just puts a whole new paradigm on what's going on. So we're going to be looking for answers tonight. So get ready. It all begins now, because we are now
live. What's up, guys? We are live once again in Indiana from the Puritan Barn, and it feels good to be back. And hopefully you guys are all doing well, and we're just thrilled that you guys are joining us. You could be doing anything, so let us know where you're joining us from in the chat. So anyways, David, how have you been, man?
Fantastic. Just a lot of good things going on, and a lot of battles to be fought, but that goes with the territory. So it's fantastic, an exciting time to be serving the master.
For sure, man. And with that being said, guys, we want to give a shout out to our sponsors who help make this show happen, and also just to all of you guys that help make this show happen. Our first sponsor tonight is Joshua Watts Leather Company. I spent some time with Joshua there in California. I got to see where he makes his leather, and thankfully he's not going to be in California much longer, but I can tell you this guy puts his heart into what he does. And so make sure you guys check that stuff out. Great custom work, and he's done a lot of stuff for a lot of you guys out there. So check him out. Also, we want to thank Sugar and Spice Soap Company. Make sure you guys check them out. If you're worried about rubbing toxic chemicals in your body due to regular department store stuff, then I don't blame you, because I am too. So, but Sugar and Spice takes the guessing game out. It's all natural products, and they have a Midnight Ride soap and a Midnight Ride bundle. So go check that out. Tell them we sent you, and also check out nystv.org. That's our website. You can get your first month free with the code RIDER, R-I-D-E-R. And you can check out numerous things. We got stuff that's, you know, too hot for YouTube, banned from YouTube. We have a Book of Enoch video commentary where we're going through the entire Book of Enoch and checking that out, and just lots of other things, documentaries. So make sure you guys check that out. That's one way you can help support what we do. And also, hopefully, we'll just continue to make it better and better as time goes on. So with that being said, David, that's all I got as far as sponsors. You got anything else?
Well, there's just so much going on that it's just hard to keep up with it. Every day there are more things that come out that point to just the absolute fact of the soon return of Christ. And this, what we're going to be talking about tonight, is just one of the many, many things. So it's really a blessing to be able to put this material in front of the listeners and see what's going on.
Yeah, this is such a weird one because we've done, I think just in the past year, you know, within the last 12 months, we've done at least 2 or 3 episodes talking about disclosures that have taken place, and they seem to be getting more and more intense with the disclosures. And so tonight we're going to be talking a little bit about a disclosure that took place. We're going to talk about how this lines up with scripture and why it is important to kind of understand the truth behind all of this, because when things go down, a lot of people are going to be deceived. And you guys know this. So we're going to have, tonight's going to be an interesting show. I'm going to show you guys a news clip that talks about what the Pentagon released, the Department of Defense. And we're going to see also after that, we're going to look at some just different testimonies of people throughout the years, just a couple of them that compile this information and say,
You back? You okay? You sure? Okay. Good luck.
This is happening. Of course, we know that in movies and TV shows, this is an abundant, I mean, you can find it in just about every sci-fi movie, TV show. This happens in this show. This is predictive programming that they've been pumping in for many, many years. Of course, back when we started talking about all these things, this would be considered a conspiracy theory. You'd be considered a nut job for talking about it. But now they're disclosing these things as what they want you to believe is fact. So we're going to discuss it. We're going to see where it goes, and we're going to enjoy the conversation. And just as always, I want to let you guys know that I don't pretend like I know everything. I don't think I know everything. In fact, the more I learn, the less I feel like I know. But this information is there for you guys to look at and do what you want with it. We're not here to push anything on you about this stuff, because look, it is what it is. We're all receiving the same information.
Guys, I grow a beard. I'm not joking. I look like a homeless meth addict. I grew a beard. I let it go for about 6 months, and I look like a homeless meth addict. Made me look about 90 years old.
And thankfully, the Bible does talk about these things. So with that being said, we're going to check out this first video, and then we're going to come back and talk about it.
So let's talk.
Is your family a D90 SUV family? No. But Rocky's is. It's time to get the LTV D90 with 7 full-size seats and a 5-star ANCAP safety rating from just $36,990.
Let's talk more tonight about this report and its findings with Nick Pope, a journalist who used to run the British government UFO project. Nick, thank you so much for being here. First off, what do you make of this report, and what does it say about the UFO phenomenon here in the U.S.?
Well, it says that this phenomenon has completely come out of the fringe and into the mainstream, and that it's now being recognized by the United States government, the military, and the intelligence community as a serious defense and national security issue. A few years ago, this would have all been dismissed as crazy talk and X-Files science fiction. But now we learn the government has been taking it seriously. Not all these stories have been verified, but Congress is looking at this, and the Intelligence Committee, the Armed Services Committee are investigating, and we will get more information soon, for sure.
So how do you explain the accounts of those who say that they encountered UFOs?
Well, they definitely have. I mean, these people have encountered something, and we know that because and this is in the report, of course. It's not just eyewitness testimony. Some of these things have been simultaneously tracked on radar and filmed on forward-looking infrared cameras. And of course, last summer, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence produced a preliminary assessment on all this. And they said, frankly, we don't know what we're dealing with, but it's in our airspace and it's a potential threat to the defense of the United States.
Okay, so is this report, is its findings evidence that we have in fact been visited by beings from another planet?
It's not quite a smoking gun, but that hypothesis has not, so far as I understand, has not been taken off the table. So the debate is still being had. Is this Russia? Is it China? Is it our own tech? Or is it extraterrestrial? Everything is up for grabs, and we'll find out more, I think, over the next few months.
Yeah, so let's talk about what happens next. You mentioned some congressional investigations. What does the U.S. government do with this information? And, well, what is it doing with the info?
Well, multiple UFO provisions were written into the new defense bill, and Congress is going to make sure that all the different parts of the military and the intelligence community work on this. There are going to be regular reports to Congress. Some of that, of course, is going to be classified, but there should be at least one public report each year. And yeah, a lot of people are asking very serious questions about this, and rightly so. This is long overdue.
All right, Nick Pope, really appreciate it. Interesting conversation, interesting report. We'll see what happens next.
Okay, I'm not big on Nick Pope. He's an ex-defense minister from Britain, apparently. Yeah, he'd know damn well fallen angels are ETs, yet he's not telling you that. So I don't like Nick Pope.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So this is the kind of stuff they're reporting. This is just one of many reports. I just thought this one was interesting, this guy talking. But you know, one thing that I know for sure is that this desensitization of this topic is mandatory for us to receive what they want us to receive. Just like we've seen with the agenda of the homosexual agenda that turned into a trans agenda. And next it's going to turn into a pedo agenda, and then it's going to turn into a child sacrifice agenda, right? You're pretty soon you'll be called a child sacrifice-ophobic. You know what I'm saying? This is how they work. They disclose you to it. They show you this stuff over and over again, even though it may be a very small minority of people who do these things, just like with the drag queens at the libraries. Like there's not that many out there that are doing that, but they showed it in the media over and over again to get you used to the idea. Even if you didn't like it, you got used to the idea, you've seen it happen, and then it keeps happening, nobody does anything about it, and eventually people are just like, you know, it's just part of life. Let them do their thing, right? Now with the alien agenda, you have that same kind of scenario, because instead of giving the biblical narrative of what this could be, you don't have that in the mainstream media. You have the opposite of that. You have the narrative that the fallen ones would want you to receive. And so with that being said, David, after seeing that video, what do you think of, and what are you thinking right now?
Well, we have to draw our conclusions based on facts. And the fact is, they covered this up for decades. The fact is, they're now releasing information. We have to ask the question, why? They're doing this for a purpose. And like you say, they're feeding us the information that they want us to believe at this point in time. And there's a reason for it. And we have to speculate, could that be a possible, maybe another Phoenix Lights event on a bigger scale, or maybe even a contact scenario where we're actually going to see an actual revelation of the fallen ones in conjunction, and it would be so fitting, with our actual government officials, you know, and that is not at all far-fetched for me to believe at this point. But we got to start asking ourselves, why are they releasing this?
Yeah, and then on top of that, you have the Skinwalker Ranch show that's been going on. I don't know if you've watched that yet, David, but basically they have a intelligence people down there. They have scientists down there at Skinwalker Ranch, which they've had for a long time. You've seen the different documentaries about, you know, multiple organizations owning this place, and along with private organizations doing all kinds of test data to see what they can find, coming up with all kinds of scary revelations. Now in this new show that they have, I haven't seen the new season. I don't even know if it's out yet, but at the end they concluded that they were dealing with something. and they showed that the Department of Defense wanted to get in on it. So you have this revealing that's going to take place of something that's going on there as well. And what we know about Skinwalker Ranch, it is a hot spot for these activities. Also Sedona, you have all of these different areas in the world that are hot spots, and we've seen magical workings that have been done by people like Aleister Crowley to kind of release these things. Biblical narratives of all of this are, I think, what are important for people to understand before we watch this next video. And David, I'm going to ask you this because I know we've talked about this many, many times, but biblically, when did we see this happen before? And I know the answer to this, but I think that a lot of our listeners may not.
Sure, it was the Genesis 6 scenario. We saw it, and this is talked about all through the book of Enoch. And the answer here, there's the biblical answer that this is the work of the fallen ones and the brood, the Nephilim and the Rephaim. Now, they are now admitting that these things are happening. Now, there's going to be two explanations given for it. One will be the official government line. Yes, something real is going on at Skinwalker Ranch. Yes, there's something real going on with the UFOs. They're going to give their explanation. You can either choose to believe the government or you can choose to believe the word of God. And for the Israel of God that's going to believe the biblical explanations for this, we are going to be able to see the hand of the evil one at work here.
I think that in the scripture, the Genesis 6 scenario, the Bible says there's nothing new under the sun. So what happened there, for those of you that aren't aware, in Genesis 6 it says there was giants on the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God, which the Hebrew is B'nai Ha-Elohim, which means the angels, came and mated with the daughters of men, and they bare children unto them. And the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. And when I think of men of renown, I think the mighty men of old. You think of the superheroes, right? You think of the heroes of the day, which were we know in Greek mythology and Roman mythology, Hercules and all these different guys that were just these big heroes, and they were the fighters, Achilles, and all the different gods and demigods and all of these different things. And we have continued stories of these, and Marvel does a good job of reanimating these old stories and putting them into a way that is entertaining, and it's very entertaining, and children just love it and eat it up. And of course, I'm not against checking out stuff like that every now and then, but I can tell you this, that it's programming people to accept this agenda. And he talks about it in the first book of Enoch. When me and David have been going through the book of Enoch in our book of Enoch commentary, this is a big part of the subject. This kind of helps you understand the reality of the world that we're living in. Because if you understand that there was an entanglement that took place to where these angels came and left their first estate, as it talks about in Jude, they left their first estate and they defiled themselves. And they're in punishment, right? They're chained in the Euphrates area. They're chained in the all over the place. And this kind of stuff is what set off the destruction of the world. In the scripture, Jesus says, "As it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the coming of the Son of Man." And we see that because all flesh was corrupted, the Bible speaks that all flesh was corrupted. He wanted to destroy it. Except there was one that was perfect in his generations, and he was talking about Noah. And the word generations comes from genealogy. He was perfect in his genetics, and he was able to continue the human race on to the next segment in our history of humanity, right? And so now we're coming upon a time that's very similar to that time. And I think some of the agendas that we've seen take place, whether it be medical agendas, food agendas, all of these different things, even the geoengineering, have a place in this as well, I think, especially when you see this new technology that they've been putting in the medicines that they've been giving to the majority of the world at this time. And so this could be a part of it. Also in Daniel, it talks about that the seeds they'll mix with the seeds of men, talking about the final kingdom, and it won't cleave. but we have these stories that continue, and these are prophecies that continue. In Revelation, there's prophecies about this stuff as well. David, do you have anything to add to this?
Well, we think about predictive programming, and there was a time in America when we would think of our heroes. Who will be our hero if we are threatened by a foreign invader, or if we are put in harm by some kind of a threat? And it would either be our police officers, or it would be our soldiers. But now, and this began when I was young, Superman became popular. So now our hero is not a soldier, but it's a Nephilim creature from another planet.
Yeah.
And this replacement in the mind of the masses and of the young of who our heroes really are, we have stepped in line with the Genesis 6 scenario. The heroes of old that were the Nephilim, these are now the heroes that are being looked to now. And we got them. We got the God store. We could name them, a laundry list of them all evening. And is it in any way a coincidence that now the Marvel franchise has been bought out by Disney?
No coincidence. Yeah. Yeah, you've seen what's been going on with Disney, man. They're getting hammered now, and finally, some people are hammered, but it took long enough. Yeah. I mean, their whole goal is to transform these old gods into something children look to and worship. They've been trying to get children on magic for many years, and there's a lot corrupt about. I mean, it took this one movie, Red, to kind of some people to see, but I mean, Cruella de Vil, all these different ones that are just constantly programming children to be rebellious, programming them to be not know if they're male or female. I mean, there's just all these different things, and we know Disney goes way back in agendas. I mean, Werner von Braun and Walt Disney were like this. They worked together on something that we've all talked about before, the moon landings things and all that. So they go back in the agenda a long time. And in fact, from what I understand, from what I read, Disney kind of operates out of its own, like, kind of sovereign little place. The police don't even really have any dominion over there, so they can kind of do whatever they want. And we've heard all kinds of stories. I mean, remember the show that one guy did where to catch a predator or something, he would go in and he was in Florida, in Orlando, and almost every one of the pedophiles that he uncovered and encountered were Disney employees, which is Chris Hansen is the name of the guy. Yeah. But this has been their agenda for a long time. Unfortunately, people are just now seeing it, and it's almost too late at this point. If children grew up on that stuff, and the people worship. When I see Christians spending thousands of dollars to hit Disneyland or Disney World, it kind of just breaks my heart in a way. They're literally giving thousands of dollars to this organization that's trying to destroy their child's mind and their mind. At that, and it is heartbreaking. Then we fed the beast for many years. But you're right about the hero worship is hugely ingrained in pop culture. I mean, it's what they want. They really, really are pushing it harder now than I think they ever have. I mean, there's no lack of Marvel movies coming out about these guys.
No, there really isn't. And I've heard a couple people comment here recently, well, what's wrong with Disney? They used to be good, now they've gone bad. And the truth is, they've been in the tank a long time. They've been sowing their leaven from the very beginning.
There's no doubt. So with all that being said, we're going to talk more about this, but I wanted to show you guys just a couple testimonies of different people that say this has happened to them. And some of them may be just complete loony and nutty, but we're going to watch it together. We're going to come back and talk about it, and then we're going to ask questions, or you guys are going to ask questions in the chat if you guys want to ask a question, and me and David will answer those questions and discuss. And so stick around. We're going to have a good time, and we're going to watch this. This is about a 13-minute video, but I think it's pretty interesting. It shows some of the stories that are going around, and these are just like 3 stories of thousands of stories that are going around. So here we go.
This is Alice Haggerty. She's a divorced mother of 3 who now lives with her boyfriend Pat Marcatilio in the otherwise unremarkable suburb of Trenton, New Jersey.
There's one nice.
Oh yeah.
Alice says she sees aliens and that she has seen them throughout her life, even if for a long time no one would believe her.
I told my mother.
So they set her up to look like an idiot,
At one time that I was seeing these beings. This is when I was 7 years old, 8 years old, and I was told I was seeing demons, that I was fooling around with stuff that I shouldn't be. It was very hard because I'm not a liar. You know, I'm not making up stories. These things were really happening.
But everything changed when Alice met Pat.
The two of you are beginning a strange journey.
They met at a UFO conference. Let's just say Pat is no skeptic when it comes to aliens. In fact, he's downright obsessive. He's collected pretty much every UFO publication ever published, and some rather dodgy videos too. Naturally, their relationship blossomed. And then an unplanned turn of events gave them both a difficult decision to make.
Alice came to me and said that she was pregnant. And I said, oh my goodness, you know, and we were surprised. We were both surprised. She woke up Christmas, was that Christmas Eve?
Christmas Eve, yeah.
And there was a big four-inch spot of blood on her bed. And she felt that she wasn't pregnant any longer.
It could have been a miscarriage. But for Alice and Pat, there was a much more convincing explanation. Aliens.
They had taken the baby. They took our baby.
Most miscarriages happen around 2 months. I was beyond that. So I knew that, you know, something more was happening to me, and found out that I was actually giving the aliens my babies.
Now, why would aliens come and take Alice's baby? She's convinced it's because the baby was not actually Pat's, but the product of one of her alien encounters. And the good news is that the baby didn't die. Her child is being brought up on an alien spaceship as we speak. And how does she know? Well, Alice says that on one of her trips into space, she was introduced to hundreds of such alien-human hybrid babies.
Babies were extra small, maybe 6 to 8 inches. The hair was very, very fine, very little of it. You could see the skeletal system through the skin. The eyes were normal, but you could see knowledge in the eyes, unnatural, knowing that they had the knowledge of the universe, that they were much more intelligent than I could ever be.
And according to Alice, her responsibilities don't end with breeding. The aliens have occasionally abducted her for a brief spell of alien wet nursing.
When I was on board, I had to put my hand on this cylinder coming up out of the floor or whatever, and I could feel all my energy into the cylinder. And I was told that, you know, it's mother's love for the babies. And somehow they put the energy into the babies, and apparently they cannot live without a human touch. It was like I was the universal love machine, you know, for the babies.
And Alice isn't the only one to claim to have given birth to hybrids. Years after her encounters with the reptilian alien, Pamela says she woke up one night, stark naked, and surrounded by alien beings who led her into a room inside a spaceship, where some tiny figures were waiting.
I'm sorry, I'm getting a little flashback from it all now. There were 4 little girls who rushed over and grabbed my arms and started calling me mommy. I was too freaked out to embrace them. And I kept saying, let me go. And they said, Mommy, don't go. And I said, let me out of here, get away from me. And all of a sudden, it felt like I fell back through the door. I woke up in my bed startled, and I was so panic-stricken, I can't remember when I have been more afraid. I noticed my arms were kind of sore, and I looked down, and I saw little dime-like bruise marks on my arms where my daughters had been grabbing me. It hit me that I must have been through something truly physical. So yeah, it was pretty scary, especially for someone who never wanted children.
Apparently, it's not just human women who are breeding with aliens.
Guys, don't forget, this is Now You See TV. This is sounding crazy, but it is them.
I was escorted into another room, and it was filled with babies. And I remember, like, whose babies are these? And he points to me. These are yours. I cannot give you a number, but they were stacked from the floor to the ceiling. And they were all in the room. Could have been a couple hundred babies there for all I know. There were just so many.
Stop it.
Dave Huggins has an earthly human son too.
No way.
Michael has grown up surrounded by his father's alien stories.
When we're kids, we think a lot differently about aliens visiting Earth, and we would talk about it a lot. And all my friends really just loved it. Well, if it happened, I think it's pretty cool. I mean, if aliens are just coming down out of nowhere saying, "Hey, I want to have sex with you," I mean, that's a pretty big compliment to my dad.
But there is still one question he has never had a convincing explanation for.
Why do you think that of all the people on the planet, you were chosen to father all these children?
Michael, I have no idea, except maybe something is happening with their race. I know one thing, you've got a lot of half-brothers and half-sisters someplace. No idea where they are, but you do have them.
It's easy to dismiss these stories as absurd. After all, Alice and Dave have no physical evidence despite hundreds of encounters. So what might explain these alien baby claims? Well, they could have been suggested by science fiction. It's been full of alien-human breeding programs for decades. As early as 1925, a version of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds was rewritten to include the creation of Earthling-Martian hybrids. Some skeptics think these accounts might meet a deep psychological need.
Abductees as a group, and indeed people who report a range of other paranormal experiences, tend to report trauma during childhood. It may be that these particular psychological characteristics have actually developed as a defense mechanism.
There's an ad, guys.
What are you doing?
What they say, but I can tell you this, that being in the time that I've been doing what I've been doing, I've heard numerous stories. I would probably say somewhere upwards of 50 stories of women saying the exact same thing that these people were saying. And I'm sure, David, in dealing with SRA patients and victims like that, you probably had some similar stories.
We absolutely have. And the cases that are promoted in the media, they are done so for a purpose. And cases are promoted and sensationalized for the purpose of cases that could really lead them to some rational conclusions are not looked at. And this lady here, the first lady there and her husband from New Jersey, she made a reference to people that were telling her that she was doing things she shouldn't. Now, we don't know what the lady and her husband were involved in. Well, we know some, but I just bet she was opening doors in her life big enough for an elephant to jump through. And people are given and they're giving the possibility that there could be a biblical explanation for these experiences. That's totally taken off the table. And what is happening is that people are being given explanations that are acceptable for them to have these overtly demonic experiences. They're coming into direct contact with devils, and they're going to be able to explain this in such a way that it's acceptable to their mind, but not only to their mind, but it's becoming acceptable for these demonic encounters within now small groups, but it's going to grow and grow where this is going to be okay and acceptable. Just like when in the beginning, when you had the progression from the gay agenda to the trans agenda to now Katie Bar the door agenda. And this is the same type of thing we're seeing here.
It is the same type of thing. It's exactly that. And there's obviously the people in this video. These videos look, a little bit nutty, but anybody that's going through these things is going to look like that way for sure. And they're also going to have problems. They're going to be probably demonized to a point to where they look crazy and they sound crazy. And that's probably kind of the nature of it. Now, whether or not these are actual aliens that are doing this or some kind of military project that is making people believe that they're doing this, because we've heard of this kind of stuff before. There was this one really interesting case where a guy had been giving these people LSD and creating these scenarios where they thought they were being abducted over and over again. And he was actually like raping them and all these different things. And they thought they were being abducted, so this kind of thing does happen like this.
It absolutely does. And what's called screen memories can be programmed into an individual where they literally believe that one thing happened to them when indeed it was something else. So and I want to say that I absolutely believe that this UFO abduction scenario is reality, that it is happening. And just like satanic ritual abuse is a reality. And these things that are promoted and put out in the public is one of the things that makes it a very difficult job, even more difficult to discern the real from the false. And like you said, anybody that has gone through something like this, they are going to be traumatized, and there's going to be a lot of things that the only way you're going to get through it and make sense of it is the cross of Christ. No other way is going to get you anywhere.
Yeah, we had a guy on, and you remember Joseph Jordan, I believe is his name, and he used to work for MUFON, but he was a Christian, and he went so his job was to go to these different cases and evaluate the situations. And according to his testimony, which he's recorded, I think hundreds, if not thousands of testimonies, that all of these things left in the name of Jesus every single time. And this was something that he couldn't account for. This is part of the reason he became a Christian, is because this kind of stuff was going on. But this is a reality of these things. These things do bow to the name of the Most High God. Now, to me, that tells me that they are subjective beings, either demonic or Nephilim spirits of some sort. Probably not archangels or fallen angels 100%, because if they were, we see even the spiritual warfare that is done on fallen angels, like the king of Persia, where Michael said, "I rebuke you," Lord will rebuke you. And so there's a difference in some of these beings, but I think the fact that they flee instantly at the name of Jesus and they're subject to it denotes that they are some kind of demonic entity of some sort.
Absolutely. And then there's the argument within the UFO community. Well, when we see something up there, is it a tangible nuts and bolt craft that we could tap on with our hand, or is it all just something spiritual? And here's what we need to remember. The greatest builders of all time were the Nephilim. We were talking about that even in the Cosmic Boogie Woogie show, how that the people in the dark world understand that these huge monuments were built with the giants. Now, if these giants were able to build these fantastic monuments that are still today that can't even be duplicated today. Would it be possible for them to build a nuts and bolt craft? Absolutely it would. There's no doubt in my mind that that's very possible, and I believe it's happening.
Yeah, man, the technology that they had. I mean, it talks about in the Book of Enoch. It talks about how there was basically this school where they were teaching. I wouldn't say call it a school, but they were teaching mankind all of these secrets that they weren't supposed to teach mankind. And if you look at texts like the Vedic text, for instance, or the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and you look at a lot of these ancient texts that deal with technologies, the Vedic text is a big one. It has all kinds of technologies in it. Flying machines, the flying machines that they had, the nuclear bomb was mentioned in. Basically, it describes this bomb that goes off, this thing that looks like mushroom clouds. They said it looks like a bunch of mushroom clouds, parachutes that are opening and opening, and that a whole entire race of Vrishnis were completely dead before they could even turn around. They were just like disintegrated basically. And these things are mentioned. And interestingly enough, the guy that invented the Oppenheimer, he gave credit to the Vedic text for everything. He used to carry one around, and he even quoted the Vedic text when he said, "I have become death, the destroyer of worlds." And so a lot of this stuff comes Tesla.
Yeah, he readily admitted that he was receiving information from the other side, and that this is just a reality, and this is exactly what it says in the book